Everyone. Welcome to the Reason We Learn and Dissident Dispatch for February 12th, 2024. I'm your host, Deb Philman, and I've got a great show lined up for you today. Lots to learn. I'm going to give a couple minutes for people to arrive so that we can get as many people seeing this content at the same time and commenting as possible. I would like to say that this show is brought to you by Wokescreen, wokescreen.com. That is the platform I use for publishing all of my work these days. When it's, on YouTube, it will also be available there. So it's your one-stop shop. I also have articles available there, as well as access to my parent support group, The Reason We Parent, which is a membership group. Wokescreen members do get access to private live webinars as well. So if you want to support this work that I do, the best way to do it is to go to wokescreen.com/the reason we learn and join and become a member. We do most of our communicating through Discord, but it's private and lots of cool features over there. So check it out. So today's show, and please, by the way, like and share this broadcast as well. Today's show is about how teachers are educated specifically to justify teaching our kids things that we may or may not agree with. That could be anything. It doesn't have to be specific subject matter. It could even be just teaching them something sooner than we think our kids are ready for it. So it could be something we want them to learn, but maybe not in elementary school or maybe not in middle school. So there are reasons that's happening. And our teachers are educated in a very specific way. You've probably figured out it's for social justice, but you may not understand what that means or why it's being done. So a parent who sends me all kinds of material because she's a wonderful researcher and whistleblower. And I will, by the way, at the end of this, not the end, but the second half of this show, be showing you the process that someone like her, someone like me, uses to find out what's going on in our schools and how is it getting there, so you can understand how we find this stuff. Like, how did you get this, Deb? How did she find all these things? It's not so straightforward until somebody shows it to you. So we will do that as well. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to introduce you to the person. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Ego Brain. I'm going to introduce you to the professor who's featured on my thumbnail and give you a little bit of background about him, and then we're going to dive into the video. When we watch the video, I'm going to pause minimally. I mean, very minimally. What I want you to do is watch with me, digest what he's saying, and by all means, please use this opportunity of a live broadcast. If you're watching on the replay, read the live chat replay, and then you'll maybe see their comments. But use this opportunity to write your thoughts and write your reactions into the chat as you hear what he's saying. I am very curious, as a person who is trying to teach you things and help you understand this material, what strikes you without my input? So what do you see on your own? What is your gut telling you? So I'm not going to be interrupting constantly like a typical reaction show or video. There might be a couple of points where I interject, but I'm going to let you listen. Okay. Because I'm as interested to see what you think, what your reaction is, and maybe I'm seeing it differently than you. So I want to hear what you have to say. So let's take a look, first of all, at who we are talking about. The professor in question is Joel Westheimer. Joel Westheimer is a full professor in the Faculty of Education, former university research chair in democracy and education, and education columnist for CBC Radio's Ottawa Morning Show. If the last name looks familiar to you, it is because he is, in fact, the son of Dr. Ruth Westheimer, famous, I guess we would call her sexologist. Okay. So he is her son. She has a daughter as well. Both of them are involved in education, which I find interesting in and of itself. It kind of runs in the family. So here's his bio. And He's co-founder and executive director of Democratic Dialogue, a research collaborative dedicated to the critical exploration of democratic ideals in education and society. Westheimer's recent award-winning book is Pledging Allegiance: The Politics of Patriotism in America's Schools, forward by the late Howard Zinn. If you follow my channel, you will note I have an interview with Mary Grabar, who wrote Debunking Howard Zinn. And I strongly recommend that you read her book and you watch that interview. Howard Zinn is a well-known, or was rather a well-known social justice, I will call him pseudo historian. Yes, I feel comfortable saying that. He is also the author of the critically acclaimed Among School Teachers, Community, Autonomy, and Ideology in Teachers' Work. Just going to let that hang out there. Ideology in Teachers' Work. He's currently working in his third book, Restoring the Public in Public Education. Restoring the Public in Public Education. He publishes widely in newspapers, magazines, and scholarly journals. Now, what I want to show you is his wiki. Little different information. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it more easily. Okay. So as I said, he is the son of Dr. Ruth Westheimer. He attended private schools in New York City, which were balanced by a socially minded educational experiences. So interesting that whoever wrote his wiki felt the need to say balanced by a socially minded educational experiences, as if his private school wouldn't have had that. So it's a little bit of a dig, it seems to me. He went to, I believe, the, what school did he go to? It's not listed here, but it starts with a B. Maybe somebody in the audience knows. A socialist Zionist youth group he was in. Okay. I hate that so many of these people are Jewish. I do. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. I hate it. Being Jewish myself, I just, youth group in weekly meetings, etc. He pursued his undergraduate studies in engineering at Princeton University, studying electrical engineering and computer science. He's pretty far from that now. He was passionate about this exciting new field and the counter-cultural cachet that it exuded in the 1970s and 80s. So right there it says he was passionate about this field because of the countercultural cachet. His time at Princeton, however, would inform his future worldviews and pursuits. So in college, his worldview was shaped. It's right out there. He studied the connections between society and technology, took smaller courses in liberal arts, including courses in gender studies. Are you shocked? Westheimer went on to be the first male student and first male engineering student to earn a certificate in women's studies. But what I find interesting, we'll scroll down. Okay. He taught in the public schools. He enrolled in courses at Columbia University's Teachers College, where he became acquainted with somebody that I'm going to introduce you to a little bit later. He quotes her in the video, but we're not going to talk about her now. He went to Stanford University. He developed and taught a course called Experimental Curricula, the Case of Wilderness Education. Project-based, it was project-based. NYU, he testified at the National Labor Relations Board on behalf of NYU graduate students. They were attempting to form a union. So you're starting to get a picture of who this person is and what is important to him. And these are his honors and awards. So he's got a lot of them, a lot of honors and awards. Social justice appears prominently amongst them. And he is, he's a pretty big fan of people like Bill Ayers, Howard Zinn, etc. So that's just kind of the backgrounder on Professor Westheimer. So now we're going to go to the video. And as I'm not starting at the very beginning because there's a lot of intro and so forth. I'm starting at the point where he begins to explain his philosophy of education and, or what he thinks of, first of all, as democracy, what he thinks it means. And then he's going to go into a little bit later what you see below, what kind of citizen, educating our children for the common good, what his research turned up in terms of the different ways that we educate citizens. As you listen to this, I would ask you as your presenter, to consider the following. And again, your answers are going to vary. This is your belief system. Do you believe or agree that our republic, our country, has an obligation to educate citizens, that it's like our collective responsibility as a country? In other words, that the government has this obligation to do it. Because this gentleman is operating from that premise. That is very important for you to understand. He is not questioning that at all. And all of his bio makes that clear. He is starting from the premise that it is absolutely the fundamental obligation of a democratic country to collectively educate its citizens and to decide what kind of citizen it wants to educate. So that's his operating premise. If you disagree with that, you're going to hear this one way. If you agree with it, you might hear it a different way. You still might disagree with them. You might agree with them. I don't know. But that's the operating premise. If you're a person like me and you disagree with that, this is all, you're going to hate it no matter what, because you don't like the operating premise that somebody else gets to decide what kind of citizen your child should be, or that he or she should be any kind of citizen that they decide, like that whole premise. So he's starting there. Okay. So get that in your head. Also, I would suggest that you come up with a definition for yourself of what democracy means to you. And that is where we're going to open with Joel Westheimer.
Different ideas about how we should live. Have a ruling junta that helps him make. We have people with many different, but he's going to want people to just follow those decisions.
Okay, here it goes.
In a democratic society, we have people with many different ideas about how we should live. And that might be one of the most important questions in a democratic society. How should we live? So schools should prepare students for that question, to ask questions about policy, to ask questions about how we should live, to be able to deal with multiple perspectives, because we have to be able to work out our differences and move forward towards policy that benefits us all. So you see, I think that schools in democratic societies do have differences than schools in a totalitarian dictatorship, and we need to bring out those differences. Now, sometimes people say, wait a minute, politics, we should keep politics out of the school. Because politics in our culture is sometimes treated like a dirty word. It's like it's a four-letter word, even though it's not. But politics has a much more, politics we sometimes say is like if I say, oh my goodness, you're just being political, it's like an insult. Like I'm calling you a mudslinging candidate just interested in his own advancement and not interested in the benefit of the people. But politics has a much more noble history to it. Politics, for example, Bernard Crick wrote a wonderful book called In Defense of Politics. And in it, he says that politics are the way that people come together in a democracy to work out their differences and move forward towards setting social policy for the greater good. So politics has a noble meaning. And in that sense, I think far from keeping politics out of the school, we need to bring politics in. We need to have students deal with controversial issues of our times, to understand that there are well-meaning, thoughtful adults who differ on their opinions on important matters of social concern. And they need practice dealing with those differences. Now, ideally, schools would bring this into every part of the curriculum, not just in social studies classes, not just in English classes, but across the curriculum and through the curriculum. The very architecture of the school should dictate that students are a part of making history, a part that their opinions matter, that their values matter, that their convictions matter. Everything in the school should scream those messages. And yet schools don't always do that. Sometimes we have classrooms set up where students are in rows and the only person that matters is the teacher, because students can barely even see each other when they talk. Sometimes the whole architecture of the school is built such that students can't congregate or gather in places where they can talk with each other and work out differences in opinions that they have. Often in schools, students never witness teachers talking to one another. Dan Lordy called the school the egg crate version of schools where every teacher is in a little egg crate container and never sees other teachers. But it can be important for students to see teachers interact with one another and maybe even disagree with one another so that they know that adults have disagreements but can work out their differences and live together. And that's what we need in a democratic society.
So I'm just going to interrupt here briefly. He's just listed a lot of things about what schools need to have, that their architecture is not structured necessarily to support a democratic society, that the kids need to, have more politics in the classroom, that it should be in every class, and that the students should see people discussing all of these policies, et cetera, and so forth. But what's missing for me, and think about this as we continue, is he talks about school, but there's really no reference to the idea that school, at least I thought, was also to teach children about the world, right? Not about what to do about the world, but about the world, because they are children. And so they are at different places age-wise, and he doesn't separate them at all by age. So he's not speaking about kids in high school. He's not speaking about kids in even in middle school. He's just saying school. So I just thought I'd throw that out there as we continue.
Now, one of the obstacles that schools face in trying to bring these things into school and into the curriculum is a very limited idea of what curriculum is and what should be taught in schools. For the last 20 or 30 years in school reform, not just in Canada or the United States, but around the world, we've seen many schools focusing almost all of their attention on only two subject areas, because we've seen a radical increase in the amount of standardized testing that's going on in schools. And those standardized tests tend to only be in two subject areas, math and literacy. And of course, those subject areas are important. You'll never find a group called Parents and Teachers Against Kids Knowing How to Read, or Parents and Teachers Against Kids Knowing How to Add Numbers. But when we think about democratic schooling, we want a lot more than kids just learning how to read or knowing how to decode the words of a sentence. We want kids also to be able to know what's worth reading and to know how that reading links to their life outside of school. The same with math. We want kids to be able to add numbers or get the correct change at a grocery store. Of course, everyone wants that. But many people, those people who think that schooling is about more than that, think that students also need to know what those numbers add up to. Again, how that knowledge links to their life outside of school, why it's relevant. And of course,
I'm going to interject here too. He's talking about teaching the kids how this information connects to their life, how it's relevant. According to whom? According to whom? How can a teacher, who is essentially a stranger, know how this information, have enough knowledge? Thomas Sowell, I'm wearing my shirt, Sowell Love, talks about this. How can one person have enough knowledge about that individual child's life today or in the future, because that's an unknown, to be able to teach them today how information they learn today is going to be relevant outside in their life, even today, never mind tomorrow, next week, next year? No one teacher can have all that knowledge. They couldn't possibly, and and the student's not really a reliable source to tell them what would be relevant. Tell me how I need to know this to do that. I need a base of knowledge in order to form the questions in the first place. So he's operating like the big brain. Like, we will teach the children what is relevant in the outside world. We who don't actually work in the outside world, we work in academia. We who don't actually work in the economy outside of this space and we don't live in their neighborhoods. We don't live in their house. We don't know what these hundreds and hundreds of kids go through every day, but we're going to teach them how this is relevant and connects to their daily life. Do you think that's possible? Or do you think that's naive and more than a little bit, I don't know. It's a lot of hubris to me.
We need to know knowledge that moves much beyond just math and literacy. We need to pay attention to social studies and to history and to science and to the arts and even to recess. All of these things make the kind of well-rounded person that democracies require. So schools in democratic societies need to be able to deal with these subjects in a much broader way. And unfortunately, because of standardized testing, we know from research that the curriculum has been narrowed because what gets tested gets taught. And so one of the things I like to argue for is loosening the chains that these standardized tests place on schools and place on teachers. We want teachers to be able to have time and the space to explore these many different qualities and skills and knowledge and attitudes that make democracies strong. Because we need schools in democratic societies to teach students to be not just good citizens, but democratic citizens. Now, my book, What Kind of Citizen? Educating Our Children for the Common Good, lays out a typology that we found from research. My colleague Joe Kahn and I began this research many years ago, and many people around the world have been doing research with this typology ever since. So let me just tell you a little bit about that typology. We looked at programs that said they were aiming to teach good democratic citizenship. And we wanted to see what those programs had in common or what differences they had. And we found that most of these programs could fall loosely into three categories, because you know how professors like to put things in categories. It doesn't mean that every program fit neatly into one of these boxes, but it does mean that this gave us a common vocabulary to talk about what the goals of these different programs were. The whole time we were doing this research, we were asking, what kind of citizen do these programs imagine? How do they see students and adults being good citizens in a society? The three kinds of good citizens that we came up with from these programs were called the personally responsible citizen, the participatory citizen, as in participation, and the social justice oriented citizen. And I'll tell you just a little bit about those three types of citizens. The personally responsible citizen is a vision of a good citizen, of like a good person, a good neighbor. This kind of citizen pays their taxes, obeys the law, doesn't litter, doesn't do drugs, comes to work or school on time, helps an old person across the street during a traffic jam, gives blood when blood is needed. Let's say there was a storm. A good person, the kind of person you'd want to live next to. That was the personally responsible kind of citizen. The second type of citizen that we found in these programs, and there are many programs, by the way, that embrace this vision of a good citizen. A lot of programs called character education programs would promote personally responsible citizenship. But we also found programs that embrace this second vision of a good citizen. The participatory citizen are programs that value that kind of citizenship, are programs that want to emphasize participation, that students should know how government works, know how the laws of the land work, and participate in helping to make those laws a reality. So a participatory citizen might, for example, organize a food drive if people were hungry in their community. And if they were doing that, the personally responsible citizen would be donating cans of food because they're good people, right? Now, and there are programs that pursue this participatory vision of citizenship. But remember, I said there were three kinds. The third vision of a good citizen we called the social justice-oriented citizen. And these are programs that ask students to look at the root causes of problems and try and figure out solutions to move forward. So these programs might teach students about how social change happens, how social movements happened in history. They want students to participate like the participatory citizens, but they also want students to ask difficult questions about how we got here and why we are here and what we can change to make a difference. So if I use that example I gave before, if participatory citizens are organizing a food drive, personally responsible citizens are donating a can of food, the social justice-oriented citizens might be asking something like this: how come in a wealthy country, perhaps in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, we have people who are hungry? And what can we do about that? What can we do to make sure those people get fed? What can we change about the structures of society that can improve the way that everyone lives together? Now, that kind of citizen is the one that we found and continue to find is the vision of a good citizen that's least represented in school-based programs. There are lots of individual teachers who are doing wonderful things around this vision of a good citizen, but systemically, the vast majority of school-based programs pursue a personally responsible vision of a good citizen and don't pursue participatory or social justice-oriented visions. Now, I want to say one other thing about these three visions of a good citizen. Although all of them might be desirable, we certainly want people who help an old person across the street and is a good person. We want people who participate in their community, and we want people who ask questions about how to solve deep-seated social and political and economic problems. But while all three of those might be valuable, and we might value all of those for a good society, the personally responsible citizen does not really have to do with democratic citizenship. There's not a country in the world that wouldn't be happy if people obey the law and people help old people across the street and help out in a flood and don't litter and don't do drugs and pay their taxes. Every leader of every country in the world, including totalitarian dictatorships or monarchies or military juntas, everyone wants that kind of citizen. So when I say that schools need to teach democratic citizenship, I'm drawing attention to the importance of both participatory citizenship and social justice-oriented citizenship, because those are the things that make democracies strong.
I'm going to pause here. I take from this that his definition of democracy is not, it's the mob. Straight up. Some people will call it just straight communism, socialism, whatever you want to call it. So he seems to feel like the world can be divided into totalitarian dictatorships or straight democracy. Like everyone has a voice, everyone plays a role in changing the society all the time. And that's democracy, that we're constantly struggling with how to like change things and fix things. And most importantly, there's a we. That's communism, socialism, what do you call it? The idea that democracy equals we. Democracy is us. There is a we. There's a grand collective good, a common good. This is straight up communism. It's not what America was not founded. It does say we, the people, but then goes on to say we have inalienable rights as individuals, etc. That we are politically equal, all those things. We. He says we probably more than any other word. And his vision of democracy is collective good, the mob. But the mob operating towards some collective goal of making the world a better place for all. That's communism. That there is a for all is communism. So I just have to put that out there, at least my perception. If you guys disagree, please tell me in the chat. But I don't think you use the word democracy and then say we, and we want this, and we will do that, and how do we do this, and how do we do that in an individualistic society where individuals have rights, free will, agency, and there isn't this notion of a collective good that we have to teach all our kids to adhere to.
And right now, we know that we need a lot. It's very important that we strengthen our commitments to democratic institutions, because around the world, those democratic institutions are under attack. I'll close with this quote by a philosopher of education who I very much adore, was a friend and a mentor of mine, Maxine Greene. She died some years ago. She was 97 years old. And Maxine Greene once said this. She said, "The purpose of education is to comfort the troubled and trouble the comfortable." And I love that quote as a sort of guiding way to think about the purpose of schools, because of course schools need to be safe places where students feel comfortable to try out new ideas and to fail, free from bullying, free from harm. Schools need to be safe places where students feel comfortable. But in a democratic society, that's not enough, because students also need to be challenged. Their comfort needs to be troubled. Schools need to be places where we trouble the comfortable, because we need students to know that there are issues in the world that need their help, that there are problems that need solving. And so if schools embrace that vision of what a good school is and what a good education is, I think our democracies can rebound and be strong in the way that we need them to be.
Okay, so come back to center here. I'm going to go through some of your chats and see what some of you thought, and then we'll continue. All right, so getting back to the beginning before we started. Okay. So he said, that people say that politics is a dirty word. I challenged and said, that's not why we want it out of the classroom. And Corporal Giro says false dichotomy. I think you meant false dichotomy about, that politics either should be in or should be out, maybe, but I'm not really sure. So if you can clarify that later, that would be great. So Sophia says, in the article in Defense of Merit, the authors address the argument made here about having politics involved in everything. I'll have to take a look at that. I'm not familiar. And Bob says the reality is everything is political. That may be true, Bob. I think the issue is that the role of, let's say, K-12 education in the classroom with the children? I think there probably could be an argument made with the older kids. And, as they're about to leave and embark on their adult lives or go to college, you could certainly interject more. I think by the time you get to civics classes in the upper grades, I don't see how you would avoid it. That said, I think that talking generally about school and putting more and more politics into the school, especially at the lower grades, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, how I personally view that's emotionally abusive to young children. But it depends. There's like a depends kind of a thing, but I definitely don't think it should be in everything. Ego Brain says greater good. He just said everyone has different opinions. Who decides what's the greater good? Thank you. That is exactly the kind of question that I ask when I listen to these kinds of educators. And I picture teachers sitting in their courses and their classes. And I wonder, I hope, but I'm increasingly doubtful, that they raise their hand and say, who decides? Who gets to decide what the greater good is? And how do we trust that individual teachers going into thousands of classrooms around this country at all different age ranges of kids are making decisions about what the greater good is or ought to be that don't even come close? And that's if you agree there is such a thing. I don't happen to agree there is such a thing as the greater good. So for me, I don't want that being decided by any teacher. I think it's a question you could ask in a classroom, again, of seasoned students who are older and already read proficiently, do math proficiently, have a base of knowledge of a bunch of different things. You might be able to have a conversation about, do you think there is a greater good? If so, what do you think it is? Why do you think it is? You could have a sort of Socratic seminar on the concept of the greater good, and you probably should, because otherwise a guy like him could come in and say there is one, and because I said so, and let's move on. And I want kids to wrestle with this idea of, is there one? And let's talk about it and hash it out. But I want all the students to be able to have the freedom to say, I don't think there is one, and have materials available to them to even come up with that idea, and not just have this social pressure or pressure from the teacher that there is one, it is a fact, here's what it is because my professor at graduate school told me what it was, or here's what I think it is out of my own head. Here's what I saw on TikTok or, read in some socialist magazine or something. And there you go, 30 kids. I don't want that. And I like to believe a lot of parents don't either. So then YouTube user says public schools only want one view. True. And I think what it comes down to is public schools are centrally planned. And whether they want one view or they just end up with one because of the nature of the beast, that's what happens. And that one view tends to be the one that is that has the most sort of social pressure applied to it. Like people are afraid to say no. That's where we are right now. And then YouTube user says work out differences, i.e. tell students if they don't believe a certain way, they're wrong. That's what's happened. So when I watched this video, I thought he seems like such a well-meaning, sincere person. And I bet there are parents and teachers who watch this and go, what a warm and wonderful man. And he cares so much about democracy and kids. Notice he never says freedom. He never says anything about liberty. He never says anything about agency or choice. He talks about student voice, but it's more about like, this is my opinion about the greater good, not I want to pursue my own things. And like, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to be a personally responsible citizen. And that's it. I don't want to spend my educational career being pressured to do more because I don't want to. I got enough on my plate for whatever reason. And so you don't hear that from him. You just hear the smile and this like very nice, this is what we need for our democracy. So the sunk premise is that we all agree with this and we don't all agree. The wrestling with differences that hasn't happened in his world is that there are people like me in education. And I'm pretty sure he wouldn't want that. So that's why you have social emotional learning. Correct. Yes. Social emotional learning, i.e. social engineering. Got to break the brains and break the spirits and break the instincts towards individual autonomy and agency. And again, we're going to talk about later about Erikson's stages. We have to break that and train, sort of Skinnerize the kids to align whatever their goals and their needs and their wants towards what we want. We, the greater good, the big we, the we that he thinks exists. Crystal says it's missing the fact that kids need to learn facts about how things work before they can begin to discuss policy. Thank you, Crystal. Exactly. And that happens at different rates for different kids, but I'm pretty sure we're not there in elementary school. So, Bob, I saw this. I think you guys largely missed the point of. I'm pretty sure most of this audience, knowing the people who are here tonight, they don't. They've watched enough about SEL that they know. But what I'm doing with this show is for people who haven't watched the channel, kind of easing them into it, but also showing you how it gets justified. So we can talk about SEL and what it is, and we could talk about all its little inner workings. And I did a show last week about that. But you don't often hear from the teacher's teacher, the argument, the justification of why do we need all this SEL? And this is it right here. So the teachers in your school who think SEL is fab, the administrators who, buy into it, the federal government, everybody that's going, yes, yes, yes. Not all of them are mendacious, cynical liars who like, this is all a bunch of BS. We're going to break their brains permanently and control them. Okay. Some of them I think do know that. But I think the vast majority hear him and go, this sounds so good. And we're going to help, the kids are going to help us fix the world. Isn't it going to be great? And so this sells SEL to them. And then when things go wrong and the kids have mental illness and problems because of the SEL, we need more SEL. That's we just need more. We need to help them understand better. So I think we do understand. It's just they don't often see this side of the argument. All right. So Sophia says, who is he to dictate what's worth reading? Thank you. Who is anyone to dictate what's worth reading? Now, that said, obviously our schools for years have said your assigned books are XYZ. But they used to be chosen not because of the specific sort of point of view or political message or moral of the book. For a while they were, and then they weren't, and then now they are again. They just switched to which side. And there was a brief moment, like when I was in school, where they chose books, I believe, and certainly it was conveyed to me, by how high quality the literature was, how immersive the stories were, how likely it was that the themes were universal across cultures, across backgrounds, across classes, across everything, that we could, as a class of people who were going to be pretty different, 30 people in a class, and you're not all going to have the same life experiences, that we could still talk about these themes, read the same book together, have a shared experience of art, and then have different reactions to the art and share those and talk about the themes and write about the themes and so on. That's as I remember it. Maybe y'all had something different. And then, yes, YouTube user, this is SEL is referring to. Relevant is a buzzword. Thank you, Crystal. 100%. When you hear relevant in education, the first question reminds me, according to whom? And how do they know? Anyone who tells you they know it's relevant to the 21st century when we're only 24 years in, that's rich. I went to school in the 70s and 80s. They had no clue what life was going to be like when I got out of college in the late 80s. And had they tried, they would have been wrong. Like everything they taught us, for example, we didn't have technology. And there are technologies today that are going to be obsolete when our kids get out of school. So what's relevant is knowing how to learn and having a base of knowledge that you can build on and ask other questions. Then it doesn't matter what happens, you'll be able to figure it out. Chris says, interesting when you look at the policy Justin Trudeau has introduced into Canada. Yes, if you're talking about there are no parental rights and the whole MAID program with assisted suicide, the idea of the greater good can go all the way down to, I'm so sad and depressed and I'm never going to get better. I'll just do the world a favor and kill myself. And that's applauded. Then he also says, Chris also says, the last few years with a basic upbringing in Canada shows that education system in Canada has been working for decades to mold these children people. Well, actually, he's American. He's a professor in Canada, but he is American, son of Dr. Ruth Westheimer. So, but yes, Canada loves this all day long. Let's see. So Sophia says mathematics is the gate and the key to the sciences. It is indeed. It's not just relevant to daily life. It is relevant to lots and lots of other pursuits. Paul says, did he just say reset? I believe he did somewhere along the way. And Bob says, so a model citizen. I think you were responding to what he was saying about the personally responsible citizen, I think. But I would agree. When he started talking about the personally responsible citizen, I'm like, that's aspirational at this point. You don't steal, you're polite, you don't, trespass your neighbor's property, you don't take anything, you're quiet, you mind your business. Those are the people I want for my neighbors. You don't need to make the world a better place. Just you go do you. I do me. Don't touch my stuff. Don't hurt me. And so on. We'll be good. You don't decide for me what it's going to take for me to be a good person. As long as I'm not bothering you, it's none of your business. But that's me. Your mileage may vary. Crystal says, oh my God, a social justice concerned citizen. Like, are those the ones who cancel you and then burn down your house? That is why in the thumbnail I put, when he said the quote about the trouble, the comfortable, I said, trouble, here it is, BLM. That's the problem I have with this. If you listen one way to when he says that school, we want kids to be challenged, it sounds really good. Of course I want students to be challenged. Of course I want their opinions to be challenged. But there's a difference between saying, why do you think that? Where did you get that information? Okay, tell me more. Interesting. Okay, so that's your view. Does anybody have a different view? And why do you have your view? And leaving it at that. And, maybe not editorializing except insofar as to help them understand where their thinking is faulty, like illogical, like the professor did about the J.K. Rowling thing. If you've seen the viral video, that's fine. But you'll notice in that little Socratic session that he did, I believe his name is Warren Smith. What he did was he didn't tell the kid what to think. He didn't say you're wrong. He just said, well, why do you think that? Well, okay, tell me where you get the information. That kind of challenge is absolutely important. That is how we learn. You shouldn't be so comfortable in your view that somebody goes, yeah, all the time in the class. And at the same time, I don't think challenge is a struggle session. And I think we know that there are kids who could go and say, I don't agree that that Black Lives Matter is a good organization. What do you think would happen to that child? Well, I know for a fact because it happened to my child. So nothing good. All right, moving on. How are they going? How are they going to participate if they can't read? And moreover, even if they can read, if they haven't read the Constitution, they haven't read the Declaration of Independence, if they haven't read the Bill of Rights with someone who can help them work through what it actually means and how it got that way. So not just that it exists, but how it came to be. Why he talks about how we got this way. How about how we got this way in terms of the Constitution? Why do we have it? The history of the world before that was really messed up. I mean, you want to see a place with no social justice at all. Look before that. So that seems to be missing. Even if they can read, if they aren't taught what the law is and how it got to be that way, why are they busy working on how to change policy? And then engineer in Hickory Stripe Hat says, I had one teacher, 70s and 80s, that took the time to teach me how Marxists speak. One of the first things was to be wary of the overuse and misuse of the word democracy. You are absolutely right. At this point, it just means communism. It's just a code word for the masses, the people, whereas the Bolsheviks and the Maoists and so forth might have said, the citizens, the people, think, French Revolution almost. That's all democracy. One person, one vote, everybody's voice counts, sorta. Right? And then we start separating out, just like in the French Revolution. Some animals are more equal than other animals. Some citizens are more equal than other citizens. It's funny how we can't literally all have an equal say. It's why we're a republic and not a democracy. And he calls them democratic institutions, but are they really? Is education right now a democratic institution? Did it get, it came to be theoretically because the democratically elected government 150 or so years ago said, hey, let's force this on the people. But the people who didn't agree still had a gun to their head and said, send your kids to school. Is that democratic in his world? So it's communism. And Crystal says, yes, root cause equals racism always. Yes, root cause theory comes straight out of critical theory. Ego brain, we want democratic schooling, one where we tell them what to think and then they think like we do. Yay, democracy. Exactly. Then we go down to this is something I'm going to talk about as we move on. Placing a heck of a lot of burden on kids. When he talked about how he wants, that the social justice education should get the kids asking these tough questions like, why in the richest country in the world are there still hungry people? Why do we still have hunger? How can we get rid of the problem? Here's another question. First of all, define richest. Define richest country. Now, let's compare and contrast to other countries that are not rich. Okay. And why are they not? So, is it possible that we have fewer hungry people than we would have if we did things the way other countries are doing them? Define hungry, right? So that's not happening. Too many people are hungry. Premise, not backing it up, not defining the terms. We have enough money to fix it. We, who's we? What? Richest country in the world. What? Actually, we're deeply in debt. We're broke. As fate would have it. Not fate, as bad decisions would have it. $5 trillion cliff we're heading towards. But hey, we're the richest country in the world. But let's fix it for everybody else. Like, the kids don't have the information to challenge any of these premises. We adults are sitting here like we can barely keep up with this guy going, wait. Now picture, 19 to 25 or 30-year-old student teachers in his classes who were probably similarly educated to not have this background information. They weren't given Thomas Sowell to read. Okay. Unless they read it on their own. And then they might be the only person in the class. And imagine they raise their hand and say, but Mr. Smiley Face is already, this is so. Let's go. Let's move on. We need this. Our democracy needs this. It's so gross. Anyway, moving on. So leave them kids alone says, yes, they should leave children alone and let them be children. I agree. Paul says there's no room for excellence. Bob says the praxis of SEL seems a lot more benign in my opinion. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? The praxis, it depends. Again, I'm not sure what you mean. So if you could elaborate on that, that would be great. You mean it seems more benign than what this guy's saying? Help me out. All right. So YouTube user says, this is what China teaches. Let's say China is a communist country. Can you elaborate on what you mean by this? Like the common good stuff? Because that is true. And they're also a duty culture. So it fits in better with their culture to begin with. Crystal says, again, putting the cart before the horse. Children need to learn facts. How can you change for the better when you cannot understand? Bob says, if a student says racist things in a classroom and SEL is applied to the student to encourage the kid to stop, how is this wrong? Well, I would argue it's not SEL that's necessary to do that. If a student says racist things in classroom and they're objectively racist, okay, let's be very clear that today somebody could say something like, hey, I like your hair because you have cornrows or braids. And it could be deemed, if you're a white person saying that that's racist, a microaggression. That innocent kid who's like, a 10-year-old or whatever might not realize they've just done something wrong. And I wouldn't call that objectively racist. Another thing might be to say that you don't like Kanye West's behavior, or you don't like his opinions or something. You disagree with his opinions about something, and somebody could say, well, you're just a racist because he's Black. That's not objectively racist. So then if SEL is applied, or they come in and say, now, you shouldn't say that because their feelings are hurt, instead of saying, look, to the kid whose feelings are hurt, this is a school. We have freedom of speech in America. This person's entitled to their opinion. You're entitled to their opinion. That's just their opinion. It doesn't hurt you. Doesn't in any way affect you. These are words. They didn't say it to hurt you. They just expressed an opinion. And you're entitled to a different opinion. And that's how we live in a free society. We don't always agree on things. Okay, let's move on. That's not SEL. That's just the old-fashioned way of enforcing the golden rule and how to treat people and not violate their boundaries. SEL would be like, wow, we need to unpack this. You need to understand, you who said the Kanye West thing, you need to be socially aware of how your words impact other people. Your words hurt this person. You need to stop hurting other people and tailor your words to be, with other people. And pretty soon you have kids walking on eggshells and afraid to say anything and afraid to challenge anything in the class because they've been burned. They've realized that now my responsibility is, at least if I don't want to get in trouble, I might not agree that it's my responsibility, but I don't need the drama. I'm just going to shut up. I'm not going to connect with anyone. I'm not going to take risks socially because it's a minefield of what's going to offend someone. And the way SEL works towards social justice is the marginalized groups on the intersectional scale have more rights to comfort than those who are not marginalized. So SEL aligns to maintain their comfort and to trouble the allegedly comfortable white kids, the men, the boys, this cis, whatever you want to call it. I don't like to use those words, and SEL is no longer about anything resembling an objective reality. And it's about juggling all of the social justice stuff and intersectionality. That's why it's bad, because it's not just saying, don't say racist stuff. What is racist anymore is now completely subjective. Leave them kids alone says, very true. Excellence would mean individual achievement. That's not allowed in the collective. It's certainly discouraged. Again, unless you are one of the marginalized groups or in one of the marginalized groups. Ego Brain says, well, 12% of the graduates are proficient in American history, so they're making sure kids don't know the founding ideas. That is pretty low. And you'll notice he said he doesn't like standardized tests because what gets tested gets taught. Agreed. But they keep changing the tests, like dumbing down the tests to accommodate teaching less as well. So when you see 12%, factor in that they've also taught less in the first place and are testing less. I've seen some of these tests and it's scary how little they're asking the kids to know for the standardized tests. So the standardized testing companies just want to sell tests and the technology that goes with it. So if the schools come along or the teachers, colleges say like, hey, the kids aren't passing the test, we're not going to get the money. So the problem is having a public system with money's tied to test results. The test is a moving target. Okay. But at the same time, it's taxpayer money. How would you like to hold the teachers in the school system accountable that they're actually doing the job for which they're paid? If not a standardized test, it is the only seemingly objective measurement we have that a certain basic minimum amount of learning is going on. Without them, it's a crapshoot. And with them, it's bad, like really, really bad. So can you imagine if we didn't have them? Dumbed down though they are. Sandra says, just join Bo. What you said is exactly what I got from I knew Maxine Green. Okay, interesting. I would love to hear more about Maxine Green. Sarah Sophia says, that is not the purpose of education. I agree. I disagree with Maxine Green. A lot. Ego Brain says he definitely likes Zinn, creating little activists. And UTB is not a place to try out new ideas. Children are not an experiment. Yes, but ever since we had teacher colleges, that's what they've been. Because how else do you do research? How do you have a university with an education department? Universities are meant to do research, right? How do you have that and do research in education without experimenting on children? It is my personal opinion that education, research, teacher colleges, and the whole thing, product of Dewey, by the way, progressive, socialist, is poison. From the outset, is poison. We shouldn't be experimenting on children, period. We can report. In other words, we can observe children as we're teaching things we know work, and then document what we saw and then try to do things differently, which, by the way, every teacher should be doing every single day in their class with the existing students they have, and they should start fresh with each class. Look at your students. How are they doing? Make notes, reflect what worked, what didn't work, go back and do it again the next day, try to fix it, do a little better in that class. There's no research that can be done at Columbia Teachers College or any place else that can equally apply across all the schools in all the West to all the students. Teaching is a relational job. Teachers should have judgment. Teachers should be able to interact with their students right in front of them and pick up on what's happening right there and respond to it. That's the only research you should be doing, in my opinion, if you're good at your job. Yeah, Murray Boys Soccer says, what an awful line. I agree. I think Maxine's quote is terrible. It really reflects a certain, I don't know, there's something sinister about it. I can't explain. Like, why would you look at kids ages 6 to 18 and say that part of your job is to make them uncomfortable? I don't call challenging people to think differently or challenging them to think at all making them uncomfortable. In fact, I distinctly remember, and tell me if you agree, being in school and being challenged, having teachers say, well, why do you think that? Why do you say that? I wouldn't call what I felt discomfort. I would call it like, momentary confusion, or might, been like, huh, if it was uncomfortable, it was fleeting. My expectation was that that was going to happen. They know more than I do. That's why they're the teacher and I'm the student. We are not equals. We are not the same. So I expect that I'm not going to know things. So how much discomfort can I feel? And in fact, if it's positioned that way, that we're here to make you feel uncomfortable, I may not open my flipping mouth. But if it's like, this is totally fine and normal, like, come on, get it wrong. Now, I do know that in some of his other writings, he's talked about having environments where kids are okay, it's okay to get things wrong and so forth. So I do believe this is a well-meaning person. I want to make that very clear. I'm not casting aspersions on this person's intentions. I just could not disagree with him more. And I do think that what he's doing, in its effect, is sinister and terrible. But I can't bring myself to see this as a mendacious person. I think most people in education aren't, which is actually what's kind of scary about it. They believe they are doing good. Sanders says personal development requires being comfortable with discomfort. Yes. But like I said, I'm not sure that Maxine's definition of discomfort and mine are the same, but maybe I'm wrong. When it comes to social justice, I think presuming that someone has a bias is risky. I don't think we should project onto kids. I think that is a mistake. Kevin says, no surprise that they pervert biblical scripture and see themselves as savior. Yeah, they do that all the time. Leave them kids alone says textbooks now actually want kids to be active in politics in grade 6. Yes. And then Everett says, we need to trouble the comfortable so kids aren't allowed to be happy. Well, again, that's interesting. Like we need to challenge the kids. And I'm not sure like happiness in class is necessarily the goal, but the problem is in the hands of an educator who does not do this very skillfully and is not empathetic towards the individual students in his or her class. The pursuit of the good kind of discomfort to challenge them and push them can very quickly turn into the bad kind of bullying. And I've seen it. And I've seen it so much that I will go out on a limb right now and tell you that I think the vast majority of teachers are insufficiently skilled in doing this, poorly trained in anything resembling Socratic method, that they end up making kids uncomfortable in a struggle session bullying kind of way. And I think they get a little bit of a power trip out of it. Some of them, not all of them, but I think some of them do because they believe that they're doing good. That's that struggle session thing. You're having trouble with this because white privilege. You're having trouble with this because bias. You're having trouble. You don't like what I'm telling you because reason I've attributed to it. I have seen it way too often to think that, they're super skilled at what they're doing here. Murray says, I'm a school board member trying to remove SEL out of our district. Bless you. I wish you the very best of luck on that one. Sandra says, everything should not be political. Agreed. And continues on and says, there's no single agreement possible what greater good should be. Bob, you're fully aware that SEL, social engineering, is not needed in order to tell a child not to say racist things. Okay, so now we're getting into, like, you guys are talking amongst yourselves. And Bob says, you guys largely miss what SEL looks like in an actual classroom. Well, again, we don't go into every classroom, Bob, but I've seen plenty of lessons and I've seen plenty of materials, and we're going to look at a couple of them that, it's not just that. And SEL really is inappropriate for teachers to be doing. That is for parents to do. And if you have an individual kid, if you're talking about an individual kid who's rude and aggressively so and is insulting people, that's a pull the kid and do some behavior modification work, whatever, somewhere else, to take all the kids and be doing all of this stuff that it becomes social engineering. SEL is simply inappropriate. We don't need to teach this to all the kids. And to say, it's literally to get kids to stop saying racist things and be mindful of pronouns. Why mindful of pronouns? That's speech policing. Children are not obligated. Certainly, they are not obligated to indulge somebody else's fantasies. And because somebody wants to walk around and say, I want to affect your behavior and change what you say, what words come out of your mouth when you're talking about me in the third person, first of all. And therefore, you need to do this. And that kid is forced to submit, whether they agree with it or not, whether their eyes tell them a different message, whether this kid wants to change their pronouns every third week. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The child who's saying, do my pronouns, maybe needs to have a lesson in boundaries. And maybe the schools shouldn't be encouraging narcissism, because there's two sides to that coin. Yeah, and he does praise Paulo Freire. There's a lot more comments. I'm going to come back to your comments. You guys are great. But I want to keep going with the material because we've talked about him and this stuff. But now what I want to do is go through some of his other materials and just show you the body of work. And I also want to show you how the parent found this stuff. Like, how did she even come to this? What happened? And that is kind of an interesting story. So the first thing was that the parent in question found some lessons in their child's work, like this 7th grade climate change project, creative, persuasive response, idealist, where you see the sustainable development goals from the WEF. This is in New Jersey, by the way. And she's like, what is going on? 7th grade, why are they doing this creative, persuasive response? And they're giving the kids the ideas. This is just one of several idealists there. You see 6, but I have 3 other images I could show you of more ideas. And it says students can choose from the following ideas or propose other ideas for a creative project to persuade your audience to make a change to increase sustainability and reduce the effects of climate change. These are 7th graders. The focus will be on showing how we can improve sustainability as it relates to the particular target the students studied in order to mitigate the effects of climate change. Students may choose to incorporate technology using the recommended platforms. So leaving aside that project-based learning is a really lousy way to learn any of the subjects that you would need to know or understand to propose an idea for persuading people to make changes. Like, what changes do you think they should make? But then there's the underlying premise that this is the student's job at all, that this is a worthwhile activity to be doing in 7th grade. How much science do they know? How much do they know about the economy? How much do they know about what sustainable even means in this context or any context? It strikes me as questionable personally. Then let's go to some other stuff that she had. Let me see. There was something else. I think this is more of the list. Is this more of the list? Yeah, here's more of the list. They just, when does the child get to come up with ideas? The teacher's feeding them all the ideas of what they could do, and they're all using technology, different kinds of technology, Google, Canva, Adobe Spark. So they may learn how to use these technologies to make a presentation. How much are they going to learn, though, about climate science? How can they possibly, while you're busy making a presentation is not the best time to learn climate science. The research, the amount of time they're given to do this, is it enough for 7th grade to really understand this? So, you know, this is a pretty heavy assignment, in my opinion. So now let's go on to some more stuff. This is the Pledging Allegiance page from the Zinn Education Project. You can see his book. And this book was written in the aftermath of 9/11 to ask the question, what does it mean to be patriotic in the United States, and how do prevailing notions of patriotism, loudly trumpeted in the American media, how they have affected education? Look at the contributors. I want you to see these contributors. Bill Ayers, Weather Underground. Okay. What else do we have in here? We have Gloria Ladson Billings of Culturally Relevant Pedagogy, Culturally Relevant Teaching. Diane Ravitch. Okay. Joel Westheimer, of course. And then we have a bunch of different, and Maxine Green is in there. Cindy Sheehan, Code Pink. Studs Terkel is in there. Okay, that's nice. But these are overwhelmingly left. Overwhelmingly. And this book, Politics of Patriotism in American Schools, Howard Zinn, all right, says nonfiction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then I was curious, like, well, where does one buy this book? Oh, at the Social Justice Books of Teaching for Change. That's where one buys this book, $30 book. Social Justice Books of Teaching for Change. That's where you get to when you click on the website. So there's a whole thing about that. Then he's written a paper, Civic Education and the Rise of Populist Nationalism. He doesn't like it. As you can imagine, he doesn't like Trump. Then we have this recent. This is a session, Graduate School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania, where I went, I'm sorry to say. Hanging around in millennial schools, challenges and successes in doing ethnographic work with adolescent English language learners in the age of No Child Left Behind. And this is a whole, whole thing, peer and cultural play, the understanding how learning happens across place and time. Teachers learning how to be teachers are going to classes taught by him. Now, that in and of itself isn't bad. But I can tell you from my own personal experience, this makes up the majority of what is done in teacher colleges now. In case you think it's just public school, here's NAIS, the National Association of Independent Schools. This is something he wrote in 2011. Once upon a time, not too long ago, teaching was considered a profession, but then came standardization, tests, and value-added merit pay schemes that ate all humanity for breakfast. So he has some very strong opinions about standardized tests, value-added merit pay schemes. How should teachers be paid? So he doesn't like standardization, but he doesn't like merit pay schemes. That's interesting. So there's that article. Deprofessionalization and the New Hypocrisy. Historically, teaching, especially in the primary years, was a women's profession that made teachers easy game for paternalistic administrators and board superintendents. Well, I'm glad he doesn't have a strong point of view about politics. He does, and he's teaching teachers. And that's not bad. Like I said, that is not bad. You just need to be aware that some of the most politically opinionated, and it's universally left of center, there are no, to my knowledge, teacher educators of any prominence right now, other than Edie Hirsch, who's like in his 90s, who are not far left of center. And Edie Hirsch is not really conservative. He's just, by their definition, he's right wing, but he isn't. But No, there's nobody currently this gentleman's age who is operating at this level in teacher education who is not very far left and very progressive. I say that with absolute confidence. So here we have Maxine Green. Sandra said she's familiar with Maxine Green and her history, graduate of Barnard College in 38. This is her pedigree down here. Obviously a very well-educated person. She was a philosopher in residence at the Lincoln Center Institute for the Arts and Education. She conducted workshops, etc. She was a recipient of honorary degrees in the humanities. But it sounds to me like a big part of how she influenced other teachers is around the purpose of education itself, the philosophy of education. If you compare and contrast Maxine Green with someone like Maria Montessori, it's night and day. If you compare and contrast somebody like her and, Charlotte Mason, night and day. So, then moving on to this, teaching citizenship. This is just from January 24th of this year. How can we prepare the next generation for the complexities of today's world? This was in Salzburg, a global seminar. So globalism is entering in. And we scroll down and we see that Dr. Joel Westheimer, the University Research Chair in Democracy and Education at the University of Ottawa, differentiates democratic education into 3 categories, which we heard about. And he says teaching democratically meaning that students are involved in shaping their curriculum. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that students in K-12 should co-create their curriculum, co-create knowledge? Or do you think they have things to learn from adults that have already been learned, knowledge that already exists that they need to learn before they should be especially solving societal problems or even being asked to solve societal problems? Because it sounds to me like this gentleman wants 2 things that don't really work well together. Shape the curriculum when you know nothing. I mean, you really do, as a child, you don't know how the world works. There are things I'm learning still at my age and I'm like, wow, I was today years old when I learned that. Okay. And I'm pretty well educated. So I'm pretty sure that today's K-12 student doesn't know a lot. It's kind of why we parents send them to school. And then to say, we're going to approach them politically and ask them to start to struggle and deal and be uncomfortable with the world's problems. That doesn't really align for me. If you told me we're going to spend K through 8 intensively teaching and acquiring knowledge and reading and having all kinds of experiences to gain knowledge, to absorb like sponges as much as we possibly can and ask lots and lots and lots of questions as learners. And then in high school, we're going to have some of these Socratic seminars about, more like the classical model of education. We're going to get in the trivium. We're going to get up to that analytical stage. And now we're going to dig, get our hands dirty. I would have more sympathy for it. I'd feel better about it. But I don't think that's what he means. So that's what he's talking about there. Moving on from that to this paper, Patriotism and American Education. That patriotism is a complicated concept became clear in the immediate aftermath. So this is like the same ideas are in his book. And he seems to be, from reading this paper, he seems to be very concerned about the kind of patriotism that would, for lack of a better term, put America first. That it sees like sort of American sovereignty, American uniqueness, American exceptionalism, and champions that and defends it and so on. He's very much a globalist. And so his idea of patriotism, it seems, is making America the best world citizen. Like, what he described about social justice citizenship, that then the bigger collective of our country should be a good global citizen and take care of the problems. But now the SDG goals make sense, don't they? So he considers himself a patriot. Like, we Americans should be, respected and be loved and counted on around the world to fix problems, and because we're the richest nation in the world. But patriotism doesn't mean like I'm loyal to America in his world. So going back to your comments, I'm going to go back over to the chat for a little bit and see what we can find. Okay. So there seems to be some discussion going on with the chat about SEL. So let's take a look. The problem with SEL, among other things, is it easily warps to Maoist struggle sessions. Yes, it does. I've seen it. Leave them kids alone. Morals and ethics are how we determine right and wrong since forever, unless they're in a cult and don't know right from wrong. True, but the thing is, we don't look to school to teach, explicitly instruct them, except insofar as they would reinforce the morals and ethics that we as a society have agreed upon. If we're going to have some kind of public education, then the morals and the ethics should be limited to what we have definitely agreed upon. And what we've definitely agreed upon as a society, whether people like it or not, are the laws of the land, which are historically based on the 10 Commandments: thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, those kinds of things, even devoid of the religion aspect. Our Bill of Rights and our Constitution is basically our code of ethics and morality, for lack of a different one. Okay. The golden rule, and don't, I am me and you are you. And like I said at the outset, so we have historically agreed on that. And the idea was, let's reinforce that with the students, and the parents should do the rest. And if a kid comes to school and the parents haven't done their job about, morals and ethics, whatever, we reinforce those again and again and again. And at a minimum, they will be a model citizen in terms of not violating other people's rights, which, I mean, what more could you ask for, right? Then leave them kids alone, says Bob. Kids need to learn how to act with their children even before kindergarten. There are no racist babies, contrary to what you've read. Yes, that is true. There are no racist babies. Racism is taught, and often in school. Moral and ethics, do you mean Judeo-Christian ethics? Not clear cut. Okay, so no, we're not saying bullying is good for children. No, I can't speak for other people, but my definition of morality and ethics does come from the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, because I'm not about to sit here and say we should have a religious code of ethics in our public schools. If you go to a parochial school, then you can have that. Sandra says, I need to tell you more about your teacher college, a fundraiser. I saw the sausage may. Yes, please do. Maybe you should come on a show. Engineer in Hickory Stub Hat says, Bob, some people give their kids beer and smokes out of knowing negates common sense and critical thinking. Yeah, we can't. One thing I think we have to refrain from doing as concerned citizens, individuals, whatever, taxpayers, is we have to refrain from getting sucked into their sandbox and talking about, how we're going to accommodate every conceivable flaw in an individual person, like a parent. Oh, well, some parents do this and some parents do that. Well, and therein lies the reason we shouldn't have a centrally planned education system, because we can't centrally plan families. We can't centrally plan what goes on at home. And unless you're going to kidnap all the kids and stick them in a dormitory from the time they're born and until the time they graduate from whatever the state system is, there's a limit to what you can control. Are you now going to advocate for just giving out licenses who can parent? People are going to screw up. So if they then come into a shared space like a school, whether it's public, private, organized by the town, and people pay something, whatever it is, there have to be some kind of, that's what civilization is. We have a civil society that's organized around the Bill of Rights. It's organized around that. Our schools need to be the same. What parents do at home, we can't worry about it too much. If the kid comes and doesn't follow the rules, then we come up with a plan for how to deal with that. Remove them. So Sandra says, my comment is not consonant with Maxine's quote. Very different. What I'm saying is related to learning. You can always be comfortable, safe from disagreement. Correct. And as I said, they contradict themselves. The iron law of woke contradiction. It's not always going to be comfortable. You're going to feel discomfort. They don't mean everyone. Remember, it's to comfort the troubled. Remember the other half of her statement. Comfort the troubled, as defined by the social justice educator, and in most cases, it's Kimberly Crenshaw, with her intersectional chart and trouble the comfortable. Again, defined by Kimberly Crenshaw and people like Gloria Ladson Billings, which means white children and straight children. That's what that means. So you have to remember the other half. They don't really want the troubled to be challenged and uncomfortable. In fact, we're told all the time, getting the right answer is racist. Using red pen would make this going to hurt people's self-esteem. Maybe literature is racist. Maybe we shouldn't teach the classics. We shouldn't have to use proper grammar because that's racist. That is comforting the troubled to the extreme. We shouldn't have standardized tests because then we have to teach the tests and that's comforting the troubled, but projecting trouble onto them. The kid doesn't even get the chance to say, I like to be tested. I want to get an A. I want to show what I know. I want to test myself. I want to strive. I want to be challenged. Push me, push me. They don't get to say that. They don't even get to think it because they're, historically marginalized child, troubled child, at-risk child. So much projection. Who's deciding who's troubled in advance enough to design the curriculum? If it's a social justice person, they're doing it in a racist way. Oh, you have brown skin. You must be troubled. Okay, so let's see. We said that, and she said growth can be painful. Yes, and everyone needs to grow, not just the white kids. Bob says engineering Hickory Stripe hat, then something has to draw that moral line, and a teacher still uses discretion. Who decides what's right or wrong? I don't think you're right. Teachers have to use discretion, but increasingly the SEL curricula have scripts or on a computer. And so they're telling the child many things, and they are projecting these biases onto kids who may not have them. So the teacher is very often removed even from using that discretion. So it's not always the case. Pronouns, Rufus Xavier Sarsaparilla. Wait, that's from Schoolhouse Rock, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it is. Let's see. Forcing someone to say pronouns is a first A violation, compelled speech. That is correct. There is nothing objectively, legally, except for all these little laws that they're passing to compel speech, which are unconstitutional and I wish someone would sue, but okay. There is nothing objectively illegal or immoral about using pronouns that match what my eyeballs see. So if I look at someone and to me, they look male because they are male. It's not I made a mistake. It's not I looked at a woman and she looked really masculine and I called her he or she, and I messed it up. But I'm looking at someone who is a male and looks like a male. And my brain goes, he. And somebody says, that's wrong. You should say she. And you do that to a child, you are causing a massive amount of confusion. They don't get it. They don't understand why. And the explanation is akin to explaining somebody's religious belief and saying, defer to their religious belief and just go along with it, which we're not supposed to do. On top of, we're not supposed to compel speech in a public school. Christine says, I saw Jane L.A. Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes clip from maybe 8 years ago where she's ripping into a high school girl about white privilege, made her cry, just berating and belittling her. Yes, and they do it with the privilege walk still. Let's see. They will be taught that science is owned. Yes, that we talk all the time about that. Rebecca, Pasco, Florida, Bob says, where is the line drawn if a student was told not to call others slaves due to their skin color? You'd have no issue with that. Is that even real? I mean, is there a child? And again, if it's a child, you deal with that child. You don't come up with an entire curriculum that takes up a major portion of the school day and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars for a district to preempt the possibility that a child might call someone something. First of all, it's not working. It's not working. There are more fights. There is more mental illness. There are more kids calling each other racial names, racialized epithets than there ever were when I was in school. And again, 1970s, that I was in elementary and middle school and first couple years of high school. This was not an issue. People were not walking around in my very diverse school calling people slaves or saying racist things in class. That just didn't happen. But it's happening now with the SEL. So it is resurrecting a problem. It and DEI are resurrecting problems. You separate kids and make them hyper aware of their racial differences and hyper aware that they could say something offensive and this is offensive and that is offensive. And kids do what kids do. They figure out how to jockey for position in the social order using these weapons that you have handed them. Everett says kids need to learn how clean water comes out of the tap and lights turn on the flick of a finger before they can understand how to create greener, more equitable system. Thank you again. Yes, absolutely. You have to know what is got to be what is before you can talk about how to change it. In what court of law is social justice dispensed? Exactly. The qualifier social in front of it just means revenge. That's all it means. Bob says SEL generally isn't taught to teachers. Teachers learn SEL to apply to the students to encourage them not to bully each other. You know, you keep saying that, and yet I have seen with my own eyes that there are SEL trainings, many, many, many SEL trainings. When a school district purchases, whether it's Second Step or Panorama Ed or DESA or any of these other programs, anything that's come out of the Castle model, and there are many companies, they have people who come into the school and they train the teachers. They also give them all kinds of stuff on computers and so on, and when to use it, how to use it. You can't tell me it isn't taught to teacher. Yes, it is. As professional development, it absolutely is. And they don't just apply it to students to encourage them not to bully each other. That may have been the case roughly 10 years ago. We are now in the phase of what's called transformative SEL. That is not what it's for. It is explicitly, go watch the show from last week. It's from, I went on the Castle website itself. It's explicitly for social justice. It is explicitly to break down those barriers from individuality to group identity. That has nothing to do with don't bully someone. T Secret Scroll says, if we're all honest, truthful, the justice will happen. Well, if we all took care of our own business and didn't bother other people and step on their toes and try to tell them how to live their lives, we probably would get along a lot better. Things would work a lot better, I think. So let's see. Rebecca says, Bob, an individual cannot be compelled to speak if it goes against their fundamental beliefs. I agree. They shouldn't be. And Bob says, happens every day. Racist and anti-LGBT phrases are generally discouraged in the classroom. Who decides what's right or wrong? Generally discouraged, and you're punished. And you're, going to have all kinds of remediation or whatever is very different. If you simply were to say to the class, treat each other with respect and try to, be kind and don't go out of your way to be aggressive. So I'll give you an example. Kid in the class says, I want to be known by these pronouns. Kid A says that. Kid B doesn't want to use those pronouns because they look at that kid and that doesn't align with what their brain sees. The polite thing to do, I'll call it polite. Remember politeness? Remember manners? The polite thing to do would be simply to avoid that kid, because chances are they don't agree with a lot of things that are going on in that kid's life. So just avoid the kid. Be polite. Say, hey, hi, can excuse me, please, thank you. But that's about it. You don't need to be friends with everybody. SEL tends to try to encourage everyone to talk with everyone all the time and, like inclusion and blah, blah, blah. No. Kids should not be forced to include people who do not share their values, as long as they're polite, as long as they're decent and respectful and don't go out of their way to be mean. Now, they can call that child by their name. So if they say, my name is Alex, gender neutral. Okay, Alex. So Alex wants a pencil, or Alex needs a partner. Alex, use their name. There you go. You're not compelled to say a pronoun. Can we move on to the next topic? What are we here to do? We're here to learn history or English or whatever. So we're spending way too much time micromanaging the social interactions of these children instead of modeling for them what matters and what doesn't really matter. And what doesn't really matter is like this. It doesn't. Politeness matters. Decency matters. Basic respect for other people's boundaries both sides. You with the pronouns, no, you don't get to yell at this kid because they're not using your preferred pronouns. You cannot force them to do it. You who don't want to use their preferred pronouns, you don't get to walk up to their face and go, he. No, that's rude. That's just rude. It's unkind. I'm not making you say the pronouns, but stop it with the, forcing of the pronoun. Like both of them, go to your corners. Now get back to doing what we're here to do. But that doesn't happen. Kid who doesn't want to say them is struggle sessioned into believing they're a bad human because they won't go along with the delusion of this kid. They won't modify their values to agree with that kid. That's how it's getting practiced in the classroom. SEL is part of the curriculum. It's called school-wide SEL, Bob. It is in everything. Go to the Castle website. You are 10 years behind. Yeah. Look in your budget. It's there. I mean, I'm not even going to have that debate. It is absolutely there. Sandra says, are you familiar with Catherine Burblesing? Yes, I love her. She's been on this channel twice. She's the English headmistress who's been in the headlines she runs a tight ship. Yes. And her students are incredibly successful. She was sued by a Muslim student for not allowing a separate prayer room. I hope she wins. If you're going to go along with the premise that the schools are for the greater good, for the collective or whatever, and while I disagree with that, if you're gonna do it, we don't have all these little separate thises and that's. We don't have separate race-based clubs. We don't have separate religious-based prayer rooms. No. This is where this community is coming to learn, and that's what we're doing here. This is not a place where all of your needs are going to get met all day. And if you don't like that, then go either to a parochial school, private school, get homeschooled. The government is the wrong place to go to meet all of your personal preferences and needs. Someone's going to lose. In this democracy, it's going to be a struggle. If everybody gets a voice, remember the two wolves and the lamb? That's democracy. Well, the wolves are going to win, and the lamb is going to be dinner. And that's why I'm opposed to government-run education, because whoever's the loudest voice, the biggest bully, is going to win the day. And that's what you're going to get. And you cannot possibly please everybody. Ego Brain says, exactly, Deb, and I've heard people say the state should take the kids and raise them. Yes. Canada says there are no such thing as parental rights. So, yes, they do learn SEL in the college they go to, and they are learning it on the campuses of their school. So, for example, I'm almost 58 years old. If I were teaching in a school, because I would not have learned it in college and I would not have learned it in my graduate program in education, I would absolutely have to sit for professional development in SEL to be taught, because it wouldn't be on my CV. Everett says they're instilling an adolescent mindset. The kids are being taught just to critique society. Yes, absolutely. And okay, so now I want to talk to you about, I made a big claim. I admit it. I made a pretty big claim at the start of this in the thumbnail, where I said that this is how they justify emotional abuse. And I want to explain why I said that. Okay. I said it because I was taught, and I agree with, Erikson's stages of development. These are the stages of the psychosocial stages of child development. Sorry, now we're going to concern ourselves with stages 4 and 5, because we're talking about school kids. Okay. So we're going to be talking about, actually we could go with stage 3, initiative versus guilt, preschool from 3 to 5, but this says middle school years from 6 to 11. 6 is really like kindergarten and stuff. So let's concern ourselves with that to begin with. And then we're going to talk about identity versus confusion. So first, industry versus inferiority in psychosocial development. This is what I want you to consider. The major question that the child is asking him or herself in this age range, 6 to 12, is how can I be good? Their basic virtue is competence. They want to be competent. What does competent mean? Right? That I can do things. I can do things for myself. I can do the things I set out to do. Read, do math, walk across the room without falling down, pour myself a glass of milk, make my bed, get dressed on my own, find my way, around the school building, find my way to school from my house. I mean, these are the competencies that are pretty relevant in the life of a kid 6 to 12 years of age. How can I be good? A good person, a good son or daughter, a good kid, a good, just like, how can I be good? So the important event is school. And for most kids, they're in school. If you're homeschooled, then, it's learning at home or whatever it is. But what I'm concerned about is I'm concerned about what is happening when the kid is learning new skills, like brand new reading. It's a doozy. Math, spelling, writing, even holding a pencil correctly, cutting with scissors, all of these things. When they're learning all these new schools and their skills, and they're trying to navigate this stage, and they're in now amongst all kinds of other kids. Now they have to get to know kids a little bit on the playground or whatever before they go to school. That's just good parents are going to take them to the park and have them around siblings and cousins and other people. It's likely to happen. But this is a lot. They're going into school. How can I be good? Along comes teacher in kindergarten. What are your pronouns? My what? They don't know what a noun is. What are your pronouns? Well, what are you talking about? And then they're shown the gender corn, or they're shown the little the genderbread man, or they're shown something like that. And it's like, well, mom and dad, assigned you, and the doctor assigned you this sex at birth, whatever, and so forth. But you get to choose. And some people are this, and some people are that, and some people are something different. And this kid who has believed one of the most fundamental thing they've known about themselves, their whole little life, is I'm a boy or I'm a girl. These are my parts and this is what it means. Now, that has nothing to do with what clothes they like, what toys they like to play with, or anything like that. They've known that they are one of these two things. And now a teacher, a new adult, comes in and challenges the bedrock of their entire existence of what they are, who they are. At the very moment they're trying to figure out how to be good. And if they push, so what, I'm a boy. Oh, well, are you sure? Whatever the conversation is. Or some other kid goes, I don't know, I want to be this today. So now they're thinking, wait, there's a whole new set of rules. And part of being good is following this brand new set of rules that doesn't align with reality. This is somebody's feels, somebody's beliefs. And it is a belief. Doesn't align with science. And so already I might not be good if fill in the blank. Am I a good boy if I don't like this, that, and the other? Am I a good girl if I don't like this, that, if I don't use pronouns, if I do use pronouns, if I use the wrong ones, if I get it wrong, if my parents got it wrong? So we have that. Then we go right into things as early as kindergarten. They are doing things like Black Lives Matter. They are doing projects about the climate in kindergarten. They, and in fact, I was sent, and I meant to bring it up. Yes, here we go. I have pictures that I want to bring up for you. So this is one. Hold on. I gotta get this picture. Where is it? Sorry, guys. I think it's, nope, it's not that. Why is this not working? It's kind of hard sometimes to show pictures on here because you have to get the right, here we go. All right. So here's one. This is in New Jersey, and this was shared with me by the parent. Such a fun and powerful assembly with Guardian the superhero. He shared each one of us can be a hero. This is kindergarten. By being up standards and being respectful to all. Our students are ready to learn and lead with kindness. Now you might think, well, what's wrong with that? Being an upstander. Well, what is an upstander? An upstander is a person who sees something else wrong. Could be anything. It doesn't just have to be somebody being mean to another kid, which is risky in and of itself. I don't think we can read this very well. But yes, they're bullying, stealing, back-talking, name-calling, lying, cheating, etc. So putting all this out there and saying, be an upstander. They don't just want them to behave. Like, don't lie, don't cheat, don't say mean words, don't bully. They want them to stand up and call out other people who are doing those things. That's what being an upstander is. Basically tattling. So to be good is, and leading with kindness is, they're doing this, they're doing that, I'm doing it right, they're doing it wrong. In some schools, this translates to an app that they put on their phone called the Stop It app, and they can actually report, I heard someone say mean words. I heard that it. Now you guys be the judge. Do you think that at a time when a kid's going, what does it mean to be good, and passing the message that what it means to be good is tattling? What it means to be good is observing everybody else's behavior and concerning yourself very much with what other people are doing and saying, they're doing this and they're doing that. I'm going to stand up and point it out. And if that's the currency, the social currency to be good, am I going to look for things that are wrong to point out and be an upstander about? Probably. How much grace am I showing other people? Because, people make mistakes. They goof. They shove somebody by accident. They say a mean word and they didn't mean it, but they were having an argument. Everybody's suddenly Gladys Kravitz, but they're good and they get rewarded and everyone's a hero. Being respectful to all. Is it really, though, respectful to stand up and point out when everybody's doing something wrong? Do they know the difference, really? So I am concerned about that one. The upstander thing. And that's in kindergarten. We're already teaching them that to be good is to do that. Then there was another one. Now that I know how to bring it up, it'll be a little bit easier. Okay. This is a middle school situation that we're going to be seeing over here. And here it is. Okay, observing and researching the impact of global warming on UN countries and the greater UN SDG goals, global citizenry. So remember I said that global citizenry was very big for this guy? Well, here it is in this New Jersey school. They are observing and researching the impact of global warming. This is 6th grade. It's middle school. New Jersey school. So what does it mean to be good? Well, be a global citizen. They've decided that for your child, not you. Just so you know what's going on. All right, moving back to the Erickson stuff. There's a reason that this, this I think is abusive. I just don't think we lay this on kids. So how can I be good? And they start telling you how to be good in ways that separate you by race, separate you by gender, tell you to stand up and call out other people's behavior rather than just minding your own business and trying to be as good a person as you personally can be. And that's how to be good. It's laying a lot on a little kid. Then let's move on to the middle school years. And this is, now we're getting into, no, that's number 4. I'm in the wrong one. Hold on one second. 10 years. Okay, so from 12 to 18 years, we are in the identity and role confusion and psychosocial development. Sound familiar? 12 to 18. So this is middle school through high school, adolescent psychosocial development. Now, who am I? Who am I? And the basic virtue is fidelity, and this is the important events or social relationships. Who am I? In comes the school to tell them about their identities. Check off the boxes on your identity, like the intersectional chart. And that's not, and you're also like, what does it mean to be a good person? Okay, we got to align with the collective, other people's needs, be upstander, etc. And now what is my identity? Well, what is my group identity? The school's going to tell them because social justice. It's not, hey, go figure it out. All kinds of things you can be. And other people should be respectful of whatever that is. Moving on. It's you already are these 10 things, whether you think it or not. You're Black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're this, you're that, you're gay, you're straight, you're it's defined externally. And I say that this is emotional abuse, and I'm going to show you an article that helps me explain it better, because this is coming from outside of them. This isn't coming from inside of them. Yes, they are dealing with this as their development. But when the school focuses on social justice and says, this is the kind of person you should be, not just these are the things you need to learn, but this is the kind of citizen you need to be. This is what problems you need to concern yourself with. You should work on solving problems for other people, and not just other people right there in your home or your local community or your state or your country, but globally, while you're busy figuring out your identity and how to be good. It's a lot of projection. This is a lot of adults making children responsible for the adult world. And I have always thought that that was toxic. That's how we talk about toxic parents laying their big people problems on their kids. I think it's the same, just at an institutional level. So I found this article, Toxic People Affect Kids Too, Know the Signs and How to Explore a Little Deeper. This is by somebody named Karen Young, who is a psychologist. This is in something called Hayes Sigmund. I just happened to find it doing a search, but I really loved a lot of things that she said here. We teach our kids to respect adults and other children, and they should. Respect is an important part of growing up to be a pretty great human. There's something else, though, that's even more important, teaching them to respect themselves first. How much respect can you give to somebody else if you have no self-respect? If you look outside yourself to find out from other people who you are, who you should be, what makes a good person, et cetera, if that's externalized 100% of the time because social justice. Sometimes that means letting them know when we don't support something an adult in their lives has said or done and giving them permission to close down to the influence of those who contaminate their self-esteem, their happiness, and their self-concept. It's not always easy or possible to withdraw from a relationship, but with our support, they can minimize the influence and impact of those broken adults who might otherwise do harm. There are a lot of broken adults in teaching. We've seen them on TikTok. We've seen them crying when students wouldn't use their preferred pronouns. We've seen them celebrating when the kids did, like it's about them. We've seen teachers talk about how excited they are when students come out to them and how eager they are to keep it a secret from the parents, and how readily they will believe that parents are bad and won't accept their child just because the kid doesn't want mom and dad to know. Kids don't want to tell their parents things for lots of different reasons, not least of which is I don't want mom and dad to talk me out of the new social credit system that I've built for myself by pretending that I'm non-binary at school. So don't tell them. Doesn't mean mom and dad are abusive. There's maybe mom and dad want the kid to have a little more self-respect and not feel like they have to do the latest trendy thing to fit in order to not get bullied. And they know that mom and dad would do that and hold them accountable to stick up for themselves. And they don't want to because this is giving them some comfort. It's a little bubble wrap of social protection around them to say that they're non-binary. And if you think that I am crazy in saying that, I am not. And I've had teenage girls tell me that in so many words, as have other people. I'm not saying all, but it does happen. Kids lie to their parents for a million different reasons. And for teachers to assume that it's because abuse or because whatever, and they're the extra special people, that is a boundary violation. It is abuse. You are grooming, you're like bringing that child into your confidence, and that is not a good thing to do. But we can't coach our kids to separate from that relationship. They're in this classroom, they're in school, they have to go there every day. And if we don't know what's happening, if we don't even know what's going on, we cannot give them the permission to say no to that adult, can we? We all have an inner, so it says here, toxic relationships are one in which someone's own negative behavior can cause emotional damage or contaminate the way a child sees himself or herself. And it can seem benign. What are your pronouns? Wait a minute. I saw myself as a boy. I saw myself as a girl. And now I'm massively confused. Is that going to happen to every kid? No. But if it happens to one, it's too many. It shouldn't happen to any. A child shouldn't go to school and face a discomfort with their own sex at the age of 6 or 7 because a teacher put an idea in their head that was never there before. That is absolutely unnecessary for them to learn. A 6-year-old child is not going to be like rejecting other people. They might have questions of another kid whose mom or dad has, taught them stuff about gender, and now the kid thinks they're a different sex or something. They might go, I thought you could only be a boy or a girl. And the kid can be responsible to say, no, I feel like this. And the kid can go, oh, okay. And the kid can go home and tell mom or dad, and mom or dad go, yeah, we don't agree with that, but be nice to so-and-so and don't be rude and so on. And it ends there. But for the teacher to come in, and some people are not really what they were born. Now you are undoing everything that happens at home. You're talking about a very specific point of view. You're challenging everything that kid believes about himself, about other people, and has nothing to do with being nice. It has to do with tearing down what they know about themselves. They can't unknow what you just told them. They can never go back to what they were. And I personally find that abusive. Now, you may disagree, but I think it is. They can lead to anxiety, depression, physical illness, and feelings of isolation. Children can end up blaming themselves and feeling guilt or shame. How many kids do you think are out there blaming themselves for being too normy or feeling shameful about it, that there's nothing like unique about them that is, overcoming their whiteness? How many do you think feel guilty about being white? How many do you think feel guilty about being male after they get done with their social justice lessons about how, the patriarchy and whiteness is terrible and oppressive? Not slavery, whiteness. Even if there's something about our kids that needs a little bit of a nudge in a different direction, any behavior that makes them feel less than or ashamed just won't do it. In fact, it will do damage. Well, we need to tell them that they're responsible for, that we need to work on how other people are hungry. Again, I've had parents contact me and say, what do I do? My 8-year-old won't eat. Why won't your 8-year-old eat? My 8-year-old feels guilty that we have food. My 8-year-old is upset that we didn't eat all the food on our plate. My 8-year-old says there are people starving in other countries and now she can't sleep at night. Now, is that a unique person? It's not common, but it does happen. Where do you think the 8-year-old got those ideas? I had a child, or I have a child, but when she was a child, who was running around my house unplugging appliances like the toaster and the coffee maker and the lights that weren't turned on at the moment. Desperately wanted to know why we had to have the TV plugged in all the time. It's attached to the wall. Because you understand that plugged in appliances were polluting the planet. And she was terribly upset about it. Very, very upset about it. It took me a little bit to talk my kid off the ledge that we were not terrible people and she was not a terrible person for living in a house the size it was, heated the way that it was, with lights that, flip on and off with a switch because they're plugged in and we don't need to plug them in first. There are kids out there that take this stuff very seriously, and you may not know because they may not tell you. They may just get withdrawn. We all have an inner voice. It's the one that tells us how we're going. I think she means how we're doing, whether we're good enough, how we think the world sees us, what we've done wrong and what we've done right. When an adult is toxic, the risk is that the inner voice of the child will pick it up and make the words their own. Think of some of the social justice lessons you have seen. Just think of Black Lives Matter in the classroom, which is there right now. Last week, it was a big week for Black Lives Matter in the classroom, but it's been in the classrooms all this month so far because of Black History Month, and they're using it in classrooms all over the country at all age levels. Think of some of those messages. Children are born awesome. Our job as the adults in their lives is to make sure they know this and to minimize the effect of anyone who might influence them to feel otherwise. How awesome are you going to feel when you are white and told that whiteness is inherently oppressive and that Black people are in danger because of you and people like you and that your existence is a threat? But this is part of social justice curriculum. We adults will get it wrong sometimes, and some days we'll get it so wrong that we'll feel like right won't want anything to do with us for a while. But kids are savvy and seem to know the difference between a bad day, bad mood, bad timing, and something more enduring and targeted. Don't tell me they don't know that intersectionality is targeted. And remember, it's not just at them. It's their parents. It's their grandparents. People close to them. Maybe they come from a family of police officers. Military people, there are many, many reasons. Maybe their dad or mom works in the oil and gas industry. Maybe they drive a truck. Maybe they do. I mean, who knows what they do? One of my kids was told that Publix was a racist grocery store by a science teacher in a science class in 2018. Why was Publix a racist grocery store, you might ask? Well, because Publix was building a new store in an allegedly rich white neighborhood. It's not true, but my kid didn't know that. She was in 6th grade. She came home, why do we shop at a racist grocery store, Mom? We need to stop doing that. But we don't, first of all. And how is a grocery store racist? Because it's being built in a rich white neighborhood. That makes it racist. Not just a business decision. I said, let's look at it. Pull out the website, public site selection. Oh, look, they take food deserts into account. It's a political term, but they do it anyway. And I showed her how they do a 3-mile radius circle. And I drew the circle and I said, where are these neighborhoods? Oh, she says, yeah, that's not a rich neighborhood. That's not, thank you. Then we looked at the company. Who's the chief operating officer at the time? Well, he's a black man. I said, do you think the chief operating officer, who is probably responsible for some of these decisions, or at least overseeing the people who are, do you think he's racist? Why does your teacher say that this is racist? Because it's in rich white. That was the only answer. My child was told. And that we needed to shop at different grocery stores to avoid being racist and to do good in society. This also deeply affected her. Sensitive children, caring children, the exact children that are going to be those very responsible, caring, I'm going to go volunteer at the soup kitchen children, are most susceptible to feeling absolutely crappy about themselves when they get these messages. Now flip it around. I also think it's abusive to build people up irresponsibly. And when I say build people up, I don't mean by telling them you're awesome, you're great, whatever. I'm saying, that they assign to them some degree of power because of their victimization. You are oppressed. So you're doing two things at once that are abusive. One, you're telling this child you can't possibly overcome. You're swimming upstream forever because of the oppression of the people who don't look like you. But because of your victim status, we need to make you comfortable. We need to watch what we say around you. Talk about a double-edged sword. Talk about confusion. It's abusive. You're putting ideas in a kid's head about who they are and how the world sees them that are not organic. An adult is doing that based on what the adult wants and the adult thinks. No evidence there. Toxic people can come in the form of teachers, coaches, relatives, parents, their own and the parents of others or friends. The only thing anyone needs to be toxic is a mouth. The potential is in all of us. Adults should be a source of support, safety, and trust for children. At the very least, they should do no harm. When they're a source of shame, anxiety, or stress, the risk to the child is too much to allow it to keep going. Though it's important to provide our kids with the opportunity to be resilient to difficult people, part of being resilient is knowing when to draw a bold, heavy line between ourself and another. Kids need our permission and our guidance to being able to close down to people who scrape against them continuously. The signs. I'm going to go straight to the signs here. If you see them in your children, somebody is likely toxic in their environment. They won't always be able to say when something doesn't feel right, particularly if it's a response to an adult whose authority they've been taught to respect, teachers, or whose intentions they've been taught to trust. Again, teachers. The first sign that something isn't right might be in their behavior. Here are some things to watch out for. Now, think about behavior in schools lately. Is it good? Is it better than it was, let's say, 10 years ago? Before all of the social justice stuff just started dominating the conversation in school. Every class, transformative SEL, Black Lives Matter in the classroom, queer theory, you name it, climate change, everything all the time. Or are we seeing fights, depression, et cetera? And that's before COVID. Don't give me lockdowns caused it. Lockdowns gave them a breather, if anything. Not saying there was no learning loss. That's just a matter of timing and parents who didn't do anything during those 2 years. But The behavior was bad before it started. The mental health problems were bad before it started. The chart of suicides makes it pretty clear. There's a lull in emergency room visits for behavioral health in the summer. Flatlines. It's almost non-existent. Goes back up as soon as school starts. Goes down again a little at vacation. Goes back up again after. I've shown it on this channel. So you're looking for changes from their normal. They seem withdrawn. They don't want to go somewhere. They previously had no problems going, school, soccer, dancing, something like that. They cry more easily or more often. They have a lack of energy. They aren't as interested in doing things they used to enjoy. They have unexplained tummy aches, headaches, or other pains or illnesses. They're clingy. They're aggressive or more cranky than usual. They seem worried more than usual. They seem more controlling than usual. They're treating their siblings differently. And then she says, explore a little deeper, have the conversation. This is great advice. Pay attention. If you suspect there's somebody in your child's life who is causing trouble, have the conversation. There are some questions to guide you in your chat with them. So if you had to say 5 people you like being around, who would you say? What makes them good to be around? Is there anyone you don't feel good to be around? Give them permission to tell you that it could be anybody. Would you say they were mostly good to be around or mostly bad? What makes it so? How do you feel when you've been with that person? What do you think that person thinks of you? Now, in a lot of the SEL questionnaires, they'll say, they survey the kid. I feel a sense of belonging in class. I feel like my teacher likes me and respects me. I feel like this. I feel like that. Here's the problem with that. It's the school asking in a computer, and kids are pretty savvy. It's a rare kid that's going to answer that honestly. They know the teacher's probably going to read it. So, oh no, your answers are anonymous. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes that. I've asked my daughter when she was in school, like, do you fill that out honestly? She's like, are you crazy? No. You can't trust that these are even honest answers. But you, the parent, have to ask. The school asking, and in fact, if they told the school, likely they would go to that kid and go, what's wrong? Why do you feel like the teacher doesn't like you? They're not asking because they want to make it better. They're asking because they want to figure out how to keep it from the parents. Because they know the second a parent would find out that kid does not feel comfortable with the teacher, there's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. So they're going to do the CYA. That's the only reason they would do anything if the kid were honest. What does the person think of other kids? And again, I had my kids come home on almost a daily basis in middle school. I'm pretty sure my such and such teacher doesn't like me. Why? Well, I think it's because I'm white. And y'all are going to walk away from this going, isn't she must be some kind of racist. She keeps talking about this. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just saying things other people don't want to talk about. And I'll ask why. Why do you think that? What gives you that impression? Where do you get that idea? I mean, I drill down. I don't go, oh, I totally agree. I'm like, explain. And then they give me reasons and I'm thinking, she might be right. Okay. So, or one time I got a different answer. One time I got an answer nothing to do with race, had to do with just opinions. I don't think my teacher likes me because I said individuals are individuals was one answer. Because that's what I taught at home. That we are to judge people as individuals, not as members of groups. We don't look at people and go, that's a this person. That's a that person. We don't do that. Not in this house. So my kid goes to school. What makes me a good person is I see people as individuals and I don't judge people by their external characteristics, etc. They're an individual. Teacher says, nope, these people are representative of all Hispanics in this book. In the book, the characters are representative of Hispanics. And she gets very upset. The teacher's mad at me. Why? Because this. Everything you taught me about being good, Mom, my teachers tell me is bad. That happens too. What if you are raising your child religious, Christian, and you think being good is a certain thing, and they go to school and they know that's bad, that's judgy, that's racist, that's homophobic, that's whatever it is. And meanwhile, they've spent their whole young life thinking that made them a good person. Now they're very confused. And is it the job of the school to challenge them on that? I say no, it's not. That is not the school's job. So it's going to make them feel very uncomfortable about themselves, which is abusive. Does this person treat you the same as the other kids or a bit differently? If differently, how? I bet if you had this conversation with a lot of kids today, you would get some very interesting answers. These questions are more for you. Your child might not be able to answer them directly. Is your child's feelings towards this adult different than their feelings towards other adults? So you can go through these questions. I'll put the link in the description box. But I think this is a great article about the idea of emotional abuse. And I genuinely think that challenging these points during the time when they're trying to decide what makes me good and what makes me me, and forcing them to struggle towards a certain end, a social justice type of citizen, is emotional abuse. It is not for the government of all entities, but it isn't even for any school, even a private school, to tell your child what kind of person they should be, even what kind of citizen they should be. The only kind of citizen that any institution should reasonably or rationally be trying to get your kid to be is that first one, the personally responsible one. The rest is not for them to do. That is straight up ideology. We didn't all agree to that. We didn't all vote for that. The country is very divided on what kind of nation we want to be. And educators have no business trying to recruit your children to their particular side of that debate. This is not, we don't have this debate through our children. That's abuse. These people should be having that debate with us, adult to adult. Show up at the school board meeting, professor. Go into communities and sell people on this. Go face to face with parents of the children upon whom you base your livelihood. They're not your kids. They are not of your body. You are not walking around with your heart, walking around outside your body because they're yours. They're not yours. They're ours. They're our responsibility. And parents, that's true. That's some tough love from me to you too. They're your responsibility. Their morality, their ethics, their personal responsibility, their sense of self, their comfort in the world, their knowledge, their competency. That is your responsibility. You brought them into this world. It is not the role of this guy or any of their teachers or any school that they go to see to it that your child becomes a good person or even a knowledgeable person. That is your responsibility ultimately. If it's not getting done at the school, you can pound your fists, you can have a temper tantrum, you can go to the school board and yell, you can scream, you can vote, you can do all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, the buck stops on your desk. Whatever happens in the end, at the end of your kid's education, you made the choice of where to send them all day. You did that. And do you want to send them to guys like this? Is this what you want? If it is what you want, have at it. I don't love the fact that a gun's being put to my head to pay for it. I don't love the fact that I'm going to have to live in a country populated by little crybabies like that, because that's what they become. People telling me how I should live because that's what they think. Their social justice demands what kind of citizen I should be because what citizen they decide to be. And that's your tell right there. If you're saying we need to raise children to be this kind of social justice citizen, you're effectively saying we're going to send these children out into the world to judge and shame and bully everybody who disagrees. That there's no room for disagreement in that. Because I promise you, their parents weren't educated the same way. I wasn't educated that way. And I don't want to live in a place where my opinions don't matter because I just want to be personally responsible and I don't want to be responsible for the rest of the globe. And we're seeing it, aren't we? Protesters, ceasefire now, Black Lives Matter, do this, do that, no, zero oil. I'm going to stand across the freeway and block your path. You can't get to work. I'm sorry your child needs a transplant and you're rushing to the hospital. Too bad, so sad. I have my social justice to do. That's not any kind of good citizen. That's a little shit. That is a selfish, narcissistic, self-aggrandizing, confused, useful idiot. If that is how you think that kids are going to solve problems, if troubling the comfortable includes that crap, no. Sorry, got off on a little rant there, but it really frustrates me. I don't like seeing children, instead of being taught what they need to know, being taught somebody's opinion of what kind of person they should be. That to me is just so wrong. I wouldn't do it to my own kids. As I said, the most I'll do is say, look at people as individuals. Do your level best to treat people as individuals and fight the urge to see them as members of groups. It's tempting. Fight confirmation bias. Look at the person in front of you, and because you would want that done to you. The golden rule: treat other people the way you want to be treated. Everything else is commentary. Everything else is commentary. And if you do that consistently and reinforce that consistently, and you're not going to have a kid who goes, well, I want to be beaten up and treated like crap, so I'll go do that to other people. I mean, I've had people say that to me. Well, what if they don't mind being beaten up? They're going to go. Shut up. If you consistently reinforce the golden rule, you're going to have kind and generous children who also show people grace. Show them grace, they'll show people grace. They learn what they live at home. And I'm sorry, I'm not responsible for bad parents. I'm not responsible for the parents who don't get the job done. That is not my job. Just because I am a parent doesn't mean I'm everybody's parent. And maybe if we reinforced that expectation, we would have fewer of the, you guys do it. I'm gonna like do whatever all day. Go to school. If we didn't send the message out that society is gonna do it for you. So I get a little worked up. I don't like that my kids have to look around for friends amongst some of these people with this exaggerated sense of self-importance. That they have not only the right, but the obligation to tell everybody else how to live. So very frustrating. All right, I'm going to go back to some of your comments. All right, back here. Yeah, Everett says maybe the schools shouldn't be teaching narcissism. That's what I think. Sandra says the academic who invented microaggressions also was a teacher college. One person's microaggression is another person's compliment. Honest to God. Almost none of them are insults. Cultural appropriation. Think about how stupid that is. We've got kids walking around going, you shouldn't wear braids. Again, I hate to keep giving stories from my own kids' background, but there you go. We need to create more efficient technology to combat climate change that requires rigorous study in science and math, not art projects. Thank you. This is the other problem is if I fight back on this and other parents fight back on why are you doing climate change with 6th graders? Like, so you want pollution and you want the earth to we won't be able to live and people will starve and bad things will happen? Straw man much? No, it's actually precisely because I'm very concerned about the environment and I'm very concerned about energy consumption and production and pollution that I want to make sure the next generation has the knowledge and the skills to address it, not just lots of fear and lots of anger about it. Isn't being good and being competent different? Yes, it is different, but it's pretty hard to be good if you're incompetent. So they're two different things, but they are correlated. Just like our founders knew that being free and being good were correlated. What he said about, well, it's easy to be a good citizen or all totalitarian states want a good, personally responsible citizen. No, they don't. I can assure you totalitarian states do not want personal responsibility. They want dependency. The best way to a compliant little citizen is I depend on the government for everything, for my food, for my clean water, for my medical care, for my housing, my education, for everything. If I am completely dependent, serf-like and infantilized, then I'm exactly the kind of citizen the totalitarian wants. Personal responsibility, that means you're independently competent. That means you could grow your own food, possibly. That means you can make your own living. That means you don't need somebody else to take care of you. You don't need the totalitarian. That makes you potentially subversive. They don't want that. Are you kidding? Teachers don't have the same goals as parents, and most parents and kids want to have the knowledge and skills of the older generation passed on. And yes, they do. Look at any little kid. Look what I can do. I learned this. Show me that. How does this work? How does that work? I mean, they want to know how the world works. They're absolutely fascinated by it. And instead of capitalizing on that and saying, all right, let's go. That's why I love Montessori learning. It's not just play. Montessori is not just play. It's very purposeful play that's aligned with the world and how it works. Everything from the laws of physics and matter and motion to, properties of matter to all of it is done through Montessori activities. You learn gravity. You learn all kinds of very, very cool stuff. Just using your natural curiosity, you go into a classroom and it's like, what are your pronouns? You're not learning about the nature of the world and reality. You're learning immediately to question reality. Think bias response hotlines at colleges, and you have the adult version of Scrap. There you go. The upstander is the kindergarten version of that. Kids actually want the knowledge. Oh, so we already did that. No SDGs for Z kid. It's not just Z. Oh, you mean the Generation Z? Yeah, well, they existed. They just weren't taught in the school yet. But they are being taught now. Generation Alpha is getting a steady dose of it. Not what they should be doing at that grade. And I'm a climate scientist for a living. They're just not ready. And imagine, if you will, as a climate scientist, I don't have to imagine. I bet some of the students where you work come in with all kinds of highfalutin ideas about what we're going to do to figure what we should do and all this. And you're like, slow your roll. Maybe go learn some things first or learn more than you already know before you come in and want to upend everything. This is how things break. I mean, imagine handing the keys or handing your car to your child and something's not working. Car won't start. And you go, here, my car won't start. We can't get around. Fix it. Well, it's got 4 wheels and it's got a steering wheel and it's blue. Yeah, I know. Give me some stuff. Let's start taking it apart. How well is that going to go? Shouldn't they maybe learn how the car works first before they start fixing it? Well, it's even more important when it's the world. Not sure what's wrong with the see something, say something policies. There's a kid hitting another kid and someone speaks out for the person being hit. Actually, there's someone in the audience that might want to speak to this. But this gets a very big, it depends. More often than not, there's a lot wrong with it. Okay. First thing that's wrong with it is children do not always have the discernment, especially the kindergarten level kids, to understand what they're seeing. So I'll give you an example. A couple of kids are arguing about something. Now they're joking around with each other. It's a play argument. It's not real. I mean, or they're just like, whatever. They're talking smack to each other. The see something, say something kid is a little hypersensitive about something. They're fighting. Maybe that kid sees a lot of fighting at home and sees the body language and interprets it as fighting. So they go and they tattle and there's a fight. The other 2 kids, the teacher comes and says, what is going on? Or this fighting, or everyone's pulled into a restorative justice circle and now it's a big to-do. And the kids are like, what are you talking about? Those 2 kids now probably see kid number 3 as a threat. Kid number 3 is just doing what they were told and overgeneralizing into the situation. Inserted themselves into a private conversation, most likely. And now there's animosity and weird group dynamics in the class. It didn't have to be there. If instead of this see something, say something, it was kind of like, you just made it like, first of all, teachers and aides and people should be able to see more when kids are fighting. But let's say there's some things in the bathroom and somebody's getting in immediate harm, getting beaten up. Yes, they need to go and say somebody's getting hurt in the bathroom. But what happens is, like I said, they overgeneralize and they take this, someone's getting hit in the bathroom and I need to go get help. And I see 2 people arguing and I'm interpreting a fight, or this person's doing something wrong, or if you get rewarded for this telling and see something, say something. I like kid A. I don't like kid B. Kid B said something racist. No, kid B didn't say anything racist. Prove it though. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. Well, I felt like it was racist. See how that goes? It happens now every day. We didn't used to have this. It was just like understood. It was just understood. Kids naturally want to protect other people. If I see somebody getting hit, I'm going to run and get help. Most kids will do that. But if I see someone in the middle of an argument, most kids will just not pay attention. They'll be like, not my business, which is the appropriate response 95% of the time. The only time it wouldn't be the appropriate response if they see it escalating, like it might get violent. But it actually is really none of their damn business. If there's an interpersonal conflict, it's just words. The person number 3 has no business in that conversation, and it's not going to go well. And bringing an adult into it just teaches them that we can't solve our own problems. We need adults to come into every conversation where there's a little bit of disruption. If they're making noise, that's for the teacher to deal with. If the kid can't learn because they're making too much noise, then a simple, can you guys be quiet? Could you go in the hall and have your argument? Or can you do it? You don't need to involve the adult in everything. So that's what's wrong with it. It's a big, it depends. But I think right now we're overgeneralizing everything. Like everything is a problem. Max Wellbeing says, what I see is Marxism and everything DI. Yes, LGBT bully cult and the crazy climate change, fearmonger societies under attack adults are purposely infecting kids with mind virus. Yeah, they are what they're calling social justice. They're just like bombarding kids with negative messages that are overwhelming them. The anxiety is off the charts with these kids. Kids age 10 are committing suicide. The rate of suicide for kids under 13 is the highest it's been in my lifetime. That should not be. That should not be. And I'm telling you, this stuff is iatrogenic. This is causing a problem. And Sophia says it's extremely disempowering when you think about it. I think you're talking about the see something, say something. So I think it is too. One of the competencies or the things that kids need to be competent at it is navigating these disputes, little arguments, little fights. They're going to happen. Now, I'm not suggesting people need to be bullied. I was bullied. Didn't really do me any good, except I know I can survive it. It wasn't fatal. But there were plenty of interpersonal disputes and drama and blah, 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 blah. And not one single time did I even want to involve an adult. No matter how rude or nasty somebody was, I don't want to go to adults about it. This is like, I'd be embarrassed to tell them what our tiff was about. Most of it was stuff that, even at the time, you're like, this is dumb, but it's happening. It's like one of those things. If everything's got to be like, mean, and da, 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 it infantilizes them. And they start getting the message that every time I'm a level of uncomfortable, emotionally, someone needs to fix it. Someone else. So you either think trans people shouldn't be teachers or they should be teachers and not have a preferred pronoun. Actually, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most trans people should not be teachers. Yes. I would obviously say there are exceptions to that, but the vast majority should not be teachers. I'm quite sure you would disagree with me. I have my reasons. Don't really feel like going into them at the moment, but I think that it takes, I know some trans people I think I would be comfortable with being teachers. They also wouldn't demand special pronouns, but they also pass. So they probably wouldn't need to. They wouldn't need to. But no, I don't think anybody that I would classify as an AGP, for example, or somebody who's very, political in their trans identity should be a teacher, should be around children. I would question their motives. Yes. Nothing to do with sex, just politics. Gina says, ugh, I was that kid feeling so guilty and panicked about the world. It was not good for my future. These children exist. They're much more common than you think, especially girls. Especially girls. Bob says, appreciate the privileges of having an abundance of food. Sounds admirable. There's gratitude, which is admirable. And most parents do try to teach their children gratitude. My kids kept gratitude journals. And there's shaming. There's a difference. And as I said before, in the hands of adults who are not good at delivering the message in a sophisticated way that emphasizes gratitude rather than shame, can do incredible damage. And since we can't effectively train individual teachers to all do it with finesse, and since all children are different and respond to this differently, let's leave that to the parents. It is not the function of the state to teach you to be grateful. It's not. It's not what school is for. And you're not going to not be a good person or not be a grateful person if the state doesn't teach it to you. I meet so many people who believe this now, and it's scary to me that you put so much trust in guys with guns. Let's be honest. Government is force. Government is police power. You are putting so much trust to produce good people from bureaucracy that is not its job. It's not even its internal job. It never even thought it was its job. But to put that in there and say, yes, it is now, is delusional. It can't even get the job of teaching reading done right. And now you want it to teach gratitude and appreciation? And it can't do decency. There are children beating up their teachers a lot, like frequently. It's not a random, like rare occurrence anymore. There are teachers leaving the profession because they feel like their lives are in danger. And it's easy to go, it's the parents, or it's the system for so many years that, by the way, produced the parents. Hello. It taught the parents. Didn't do a very good job, did it? Teaching them to be good little citizens and personally responsible or any other kind of citizen if they're such bad parents that they're sending little monsters to school. Look, somebody once told me, and I believe it, parents send their best child to school. In other words, the best version of the kid shows up at school, even when they come from abusive households. So if you got a kid who's acting out like crazy at school, it is not possible that it's 100% the parents. Nope. It is a very rare 6-year-old that enters school already a psychopath. Can happen. Not saying it can't. It's rare. It's very rare. Sandra says, your story about your daughter sounds very familiar. It's like a form of OCD. There probably some of that. But like I said, what do we know about a lot of the kids that are going in for things like non-binary and trans, whatever, especially the girls, the ROGD kids, and the girls in particular? A high percentage of them have ADD or some spectrum situation or OCD. They have something else going on. They're vulnerable children in some way. And remember, public schools in particular take everybody. It's like and when you teach everybody this way, irrespective of those differences, that is not very empathetic, is it? That brings me back to my point of, even if you thought it was good for this kid or that kid to do some of these lessons on an individual basis, you thought there was some good to it, teaching it en masse to all the kids is where it breaks. And I don't happen to think it's good even for some of the kids. Something they'll think or do will cause harm even when there's exactly, no basis in reality. Everett says, I work as a substitute teacher in Queens. They treat social justice education as a joke. If they're calling someone a racist, it's usually done with laughter. Well, that's good to hear. That's really good to hear, I think. I mean, I'm assuming that's what you're saying. The teachers or the kids treat it as a joke. I'd be curious what that's about. Guilt and panic is not the same as appreciation. Yeah, that's true too. My daughter felt guilty and panicky. She was a very grateful child. They were homeschooled until 3rd grade ish. And my kids were not to brag or anything, but they were really good kids and they got along really well with each other and they were grateful and they were polite. Every place we go, oh my God, your children are so polite. And so they would sit at the table and read books or they would color, no devices. And school was like, I mean, that poor kid of the three, she was the most sensitive and would come home with just like, what is going on? So it isn't all the kids, but it shouldn't be any. Not every kid, by the way, responds to actual abuse the same. Some kids, not that I'm justifying it, but some kids can grow up in a household where there's abuse and they come out of it and they're like, most just cynical. Other kids come out with such bad complex PTSD, they become an addict, they become, all kinds of problems happen. Same household, two separate people. So there's no way to know. Let's see. Everett says, eventually people get tired. All trends become dated. I think you mean. Yeah, that's true. I heard someone say recently Gen Z are more agreeable, more conscious of being an outlier, so they're more likely to not be rebellious. That is true. And so, but the flip side of that, not be more rebellious, is conformity. And some of the conformity is the things that are self-harming. And things can be self-harming that are not literal self-harm, like not cutting or, starving yourself. It's self-harming to adapt yourself to the group or group identity when that doesn't feel right to you or doesn't feel authentic to you. It is exactly the same in reverse of what people complain about as far as gender norms. So back in, let's say, the 50s, when a woman might have gone like, well, I don't really want to be a wife and mother, and I don't want to wear dresses, and I don't want to wear makeup, and I want to do that, but I'll do it because I want to fit in. I don't want to be an outlier. I don't want to rebel, so I'll go along. That's what people fought against, that there were all kinds of different ways to be a girl, to be a woman, and to, and then that's fine, right? You can wear pants. You don't have to, that does make you a man. You just a woman who likes to wear pants, or you don't want to have babies. Okay, that makes you a woman who doesn't want to have children. This was all totally fine. And now it's just kind of flipped. And now if you want to be a girl who's just a girl and not necessarily like this girl, TikTok girl, but just a girl, just a regular average girl, that's not cool. Like you got to have something. Can't be just normal. They call it normie now, but you can't just be without problem, without identity marker. And that is causing a weird kind of conformity. Let's see. Gen Z is apparently report they don't drink as much. Yeah, and it's easy. It's tempting to go, that's good. To a degree, but it's the why. That's the thing. They're not going, drinking is bad for me and I probably shouldn't do it. And they're not saying, I shouldn't have sex until I'm ready for marriage or ready to have kids and deal with the responsibility of keeping myself safe. I wish that were the case. But if it's more to do with, like I'm scared of everything. I've seen too much porn and I think they're going to expect me to do that. I don't want to do that. Boys are icky. Girls are icky. Like a relationship scared the crap out of me because I've stared at a phone for the last 3 years and I don't know how to actually make eye contact and talk to people. And I just am scared of all of it. And drinking seems like, oh no, then I'd be out of control and I wouldn't. Those aren't necessarily the right reasons. You know what I mean? So a lot of it depends on why. The driving is a problem. They're scared. And they're not scared like I'm scared I'm getting an accident. That's part of it. They're just totally terrified to go out there and do adult stuff. They don't feel competent on their own. I've seen gender ideology taught to kids in middle school and high school. They're completely confused by it. In the end, they either decide that they're too stupid to understand it or their schools are full of crap. That is very reassuring. I hope that is true. But unfortunately, the numbers of kids that are, showing up for surgeries and drugs, but are still in the thousands of percentage higher than they were years ago. So there have always been gender confused people. This is not like a new thing. There have always been trans people. Going back generations, there have always been people who wanted to live. We used to call them transsexuals or transvestites or crossdressers or whatever you want to call them. But we used to call them something else. And a lot of times they just wanted to pass and they wanted to live a life, doing whatever. And it wasn't a political movement. It wasn't queer theory in action, trying to disrupt the family, trying to disrupt gender norms for everyone. It wasn't that. This is different. This is queer theory. And so there are a lot of kids who are being sucked up into it. Somebody that I follow on Twitter said that she's in a adult friend group, and the count is now up, I think, to 8. 8 of the families that she socializes with have at least one kid who identifies as trans. That is not organic. Sorry. The T-bully cult, Max says, used to pick on my kids, but I taught them that when anyone insulted them or called them names, to respond with, I like me just fine. It's not my fault that you think that you matter. Works for me. That's helpful. If you can give your child something to hold on to, like a little script, some kind of a mantra or something that encapsulates that value of self-reliance or self-respect, self-awareness of, like, just who they are or aren't yet, but that's okay. Like, I'm still a work in progress. Leave me alone. Like, under construction, go away. Then that's great. I think that's a great idea. Whatever it is, you give them something to say that will help give them their boundaries back. And I think that's really good. Let's see. Kevin says, Alan Bloom in The Closing of the American Mind said, mid-80, that these are the nicest students I've ever had, and they have no personal character. This is the current outcome, nice with no character. Yeah, so nice, I think, is like a code word for agreeable. And agreeable tends to mean lacking in assertiveness. That's not to say you can't be agreeable and assertive. Of course you can. But when their main takeaway about somebody is they're nice, they're consistently nice, that tends to mean they're very agreeable. And agreeableness is overrated. Ironically, we don't solve big problems by being agreeable. Doesn't mean we'd be rude or aggressive, but it's okay to say, I don't know if I agree with that. What about this? I was thinking we might look at it this way, or I have a different idea. Like, a lot of people will consider that not agreeable. And then you have the people go, great idea. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh yeah, I love your idea. Oh, your idea is awesome. The last job I had, I absolutely hated going to the meetings because that's what it felt like. Somebody would have voiced an opinion or to give an idea, and it would be a chorus of, that's great. I love that idea. That's great. I love that idea. Your idea is so great. There's no way they all believed all these ideas were great. Some of them were like, okay. Some of them were good. Some of them were great. But I mean, everything was like, like it's a party. Somebody voiced an idea. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't feel okay in this environment raising my hand and saying, I don't know. Honestly, I was kind of thinking something totally different than all the stuff you guys just said. And I don't really like those ideas. So I didn't. Me, big mouth me. I still sat there and just kept my mouth shut because I knew the score. 1 against 20. You do not want to be that outlier who is not agreeable. So you don't fit in, you keep your mouth shut. And that's happening to our kids too. There's a middle ground that they need to learn to live in for us to actually do anything effectively. And that space is, I heard what you said and that sounds interesting. I like this part of it, but I'd like to change that. But it's not agreeable. Okay, so we've got that. And then Everett says kids need to learn about nature before they're motivated to conserve it, before they care about global warming. Yeah, they need to get outside and touch grass a little bit too. That'd be good. That's another good way to learn about nature. Braids come from the Vikings as a Dutch braid. They don't belong to that culture. Google it. Well, it's interesting, Max. Yes, they do also. The cool thing about braids, like so many things, like pasta, like bread, like, oh God, there's so many weaving. There's so many things that have come up in pretty much every culture, pottery, crockery of some sort, writing, language. Braids are one of them, where it's very unlikely that the people got it from each other because they never could have crossed paths. And yet they did it also. braiding of hair is one of those things. So every time a code is braiding is from this culture, braiding from that culture, it's like, good news. Braiding happened all over the world. Isn't that neat? All different kinds of culture figured out how to braid hair. It's really not rocket science, actually. I've seen kids kind of figure it out like in a rudimentary way without being taught too. Sophia says, I'm a climate scientist. I'll be training some of the next generation of scientists. I don't want to train freaked out activists. I want to train students who can think with base knowledge. Yes. And not having to tell them and bruise their little egos that they don't have the base knowledge is a bonus, isn't it? It's really frustrating when you're working with young people. And I've had to do this. I've had to manage people who are, let's say, like young millennials and Gen Z, and they're coming at you with stuff and they're just flat wrong, like ignorant of stuff. And you have to stop them and say, well, actually, that's not how that works. I can't come up with an example off the top of my head, but this has happened to me on more than one occasion. And instead of, there's no humility, zero. You get something along the lines of like an elaborate, okay boomer. And I'm not even a boomer, but this sort of like, well, that's what you think, or well, maybe that's the way you do it. I'm like, no, that's actually the way it works. Like, that's the way things work. It's not my opinion. It just is. And this can be things from like, you need to put the appointments in the appointment books so that the partners see them and know when their clients are coming to the office. And you can't just like try to remember it and then tell them, you know, like that's your way. I'm like, no, that's the way. That's the way it works in the office is you put it in there. We don't count on your memory. You know, just stuff like that. Or even, you know, when you have to file something a certain way and there's actually like a law, like you have to do this thing and it has to go in here. And it's like, yeah, well, I'm going to do it my way. No, you're not. You're going to do it this way because otherwise you're going to get in trouble. Happens all the time. And they don't have any sense of, oh crap, my bad. I didn't know that. That I can respect. It's okay. You're learning. We'll teach you. I don't see that a lot. That may be your way, but I do it this way. Not going to happen. Oren says, now righteous indignation is much more useful than competence. It is louder and it does raise a lot more money. Covington Catholic kids ran into those moral children. Yes, didn't they? Well, they ran into adults. What ended up happening was you had the Black Hebrew Israelites that were confronting them and calling them names. And then you had the moral children from the media. Those were the friggin' media. Overgrown children calling them racist. Had all the footage of everything that happened, but picked and chose according to their social justice narrative. So that's the other thing social justice education does, is it legitimizes and valorizes victimizing innocent people to affect social change. Just because you don't like them or you disagree with their politics or they're not social justicey enough for you, that makes them fair game. Those kids are, you know, Catholic and white and whatever they were. And here's this Native American guy. And this narrative will perfectly suit our narrative that these are bad and these are good. And this is how this should go. And so throw him under the bus. We don't care. It doesn't matter. The greater good, the ends justify the means. That is one of the things that kids are learning in this social justice, global citizen stuff. It's perfectly fine for me to block traffic. The greater good. It is perfectly fine for me to attack Jews, random Jewish students on my campus in the street because Jews somewhere are doing bad things, according to me. Not me, literally, but those people. That's fine. I can treat you in front of me badly because somebody far away is doing something. Because remember, individuals aren't individuals. We're just part of these collectives in greater good. That's devoid of humanity. Oh, Z Kids was a typo. I left it off because it sounded like Klaus. Z Kids. I got it. Children are going through some awkward changes during puberty. Even the most heterosexual kids will be uncomfortable with their bodies. Yes, 100%. And instead of respecting that and having empathy for it and remembering, I was a kid once and that sucked, the teachers are projecting their adult views and their adult sensibilities and their adult values onto these growing children, and that is abusive. If a parent did it to their child, we would easily recognize that as abusive. We'd say, that's not okay. That's emotionally immature. That's their life. That's their decision. In fact, they seem to be aware of that when they say, like, you need to accept your child, and your child is exploring their gender and is exploring what they want to be, and you need to respect that. It's like, really? The way you respect it? The way you respect my child? By leaving them alone to manage that on their own instead of putting ideas in their head and shoving books in their face constantly about what you think they should be? Who needs to respect whom? I'm their actual parent. You're not. They contradict themselves, left, right, and center. Kevin says they see something, say something too often comes off as teachers trying to enforce ideological conformity. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because 90% of the reports are somebody said something racist that turns out not to be racist by any definition at all. And it becomes a way of bullying people into being scrutinized and surveilled by the school, AKA the state. So we already did that. For many empathetic kids, these far left, anti-white, anti-male, anti-hero schools are hell. Absolutely, boys aren't into sports or tortured. Yeah, it's true. And then boys who are into sports have their own set of challenges. James Lindsay does a very good job explaining the origins of woke Marxism. Once you understand what it is, you see it, that it's in everything. It's true. It's hard to not see it. It's a social contagion. True. Constructive criticism is how you get to actually good ideas. Yes. Not being agreeable constantly. Yet they're only learning how to critique and criticize. They're learning how to walk around, carry a sign, and writing. They're not learning logistical skills or so. Well, they can't. They don't have any knowledge. They don't know anything. It's like, what kind of constructive criticism and, you can criticize. Remember, critical thinking and critical theory is take it down, tear it apart. What is bad, because what is unjust. Social justice equals we don't have justice. We have social injustice. If I'm pursuing social justice because I believe what I have is social injustice, that means everything that is bad. Systemically bad. It's not just incidentally bad. It's not just situationally bad. It's systemically bad. So what do you do when a system is bad? Well, you tear it down. Ironically, we can't do that with education, can we? So we who look at the system and go, it's the system. It's rotten to the core. It produces nothing but waste and abuse. Any learning that goes on in schools is like in spite of all of that, truly, because there are good teachers here and there, like swimming upstream and desperately, trying to save the kids in their care. They exist. They're out there. They're closing the door. They're not doing the SEL. They're like, I'm not doing this. Like, leave me alone. And they're struggling until they get caught, and then they're put in the basement if you're, Ramona or somebody, or they're just fired, like Paul and others. But, that's, they don't know anything. Max says, after my post, it took a while to find that braids don't necessarily belong to any culture. So to claim it's a Black misappropriation where this nonsense, it's exactly right. The main thing is that there's really very little that's new under the sun. And again, everything is upside down. The cultural appropriation, like, okay, stop driving a car. Don't ever get on an airplane. You have central heat, central plumbing, air conditioning, like how many things? Watch television. Yeah, I hate to break the news, but these things were invented by people who don't look like you. It doesn't make them better. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if we're not allowed to use or appropriate cultural things, cultural artifacts, that saxophone that's getting the piano that's getting played, the guitar that's getting played, the microphone you're speaking into, or, it's ridiculous. Culture is meant to be shared. And in the United States, so is technology, so is all of these are universal. The beauty of the West was that these were universal, that none of this was specific to one culture, just because one person invented it or happened over here in this country and the people look like this or people look like them. The whole goal was, I want everyone to have this. Doesn't everyone want this? That's meant to be shared and mixed and mingled and made into something better. I mean, what the heck is jazz? What the heck is blues? I don't know that I want to live in a world where all our cultures are segregated and you can't do, you can't just, I can't do yoga because I'm not Indian, I can't, what else would I not be able to do? I sure wouldn't be able to eat pasta or pizza. Well, I can't for other reasons, but pasta or pizza or Chinese food or sushi. My goodness. Some of my favorite foods. What? I can't eat them anymore because that's cultural appropriation. This is ridiculous. Woke schools push the 4Ds: division, dependency, dumbness, and indebtedness. Yes, that's true. So then Sophia says, I'll tell you something funny. On a webinar earlier today, I asked the authors to define justice and they refused to do it. That is so weird. They refused to do it. Don't you think you should be able to define a word that you use that often? At least give it a shot. Super weird. Okay, so Bob says, so if we got rid of SEL, wouldn't that still leave the pressing issue of what's right and wrong behavior in the classroom? What's your solution or the alternative? Well, let's just get a baseline agreement that we have a problem of behavior in education now. Like, classroom behavior is as bad as it's ever been. And that's with SEL. So the SEL isn't actually addressing it. So replacing it may not be necessary. There is even an argument to be made for simply getting rid of it and focusing really, like, laser focusing on academics. And I don't mean rigid, like school of marms, slap you with the ruler if you get stuff wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying get absolutely, like, militant about, especially in the first 3 grades of school, getting kids to read. It's like all hands on deck. The kids are going to read. And that to me means getting the devices out of the classroom, stop using the Chromebooks, read real books, read to the kids, read with the kids, reading about any subject. It doesn't have to be like literature, okay? But like, read fiction, read nonfiction, read about science, read about sports, read about whatever, okay? But read and read and read. They should be spending a solid couple hours of their day reading and learning to read, to the point where by the time they are 8 or 9 years old, they are proficient at decoding the written word. Because remember, decoding is only a tiny piece of reading. Comprehension is about knowledge. We don't do reading comprehension until we can build up our knowledge. So then from 3rd grade on, we should be focusing on broadly reading, genres, different material, different lengths of books, chapter books, poetry, plays, put on some plays, like immerse themselves in words and ideas, and to have conversations about that. And like I said, put on plays, do artwork around it, read some of the history about the people that you're reading about or whatever, but immerse them in information and knowledge and stories and the written word. And then math. Yes, I totally disagree with this guy. Yes, the 2 subjects, but it's not really the 2 subjects. One of those subjects encompasses like all the subjects. You can even read about math. I had a book. I bought it. I found it at a vintage store, a book about mathematics that I read when I was 6 or 7. It was about the history of mathematics. I took that book out of the library like twice. And I was like, the pictures were amazing. I learned all about ancient Egypt and where math came from, and then the Greeks, and then people in the Arab world. I mean, I learned that math came from all over the world in this book. And I was like fascinated. It was about math, but it was a book. Okay. Big picture book with gorgeous pictures. And I remember to this day, I'm in my 50s, and this had a huge impact on me. I wasn't the greatest math student, but it did make me want to learn it. So, I mean, just like, those elementary grades should just be about, we are going to get you super excited about the world and everything in it and all of this stuff, and have teachers who are passionate about their subjects or about any subject, passionate about helping kids awaken to the world, like all the cool stuff that's in it, and just immerse them in that. And then I truly believe when they're good at reading and they feel solid at arithmetic and things like that, by the time they get to 6th grade, 5th and 6th grade, and you start focusing on content. So it's more about, now that you've kind of immersed yourself and you probably have some interests, you probably have figured out something that you gravitate towards. Now we teach them the discipline of scholarship. So first it's just learning skills, learning information skills. And now it's more like, okay, how do we take what we already know and ask really good, interesting questions to advance our knowledge to another level to where we can analyze and create? Because you cannot analyze, create, and solve problems or do anything without that base of knowledge. So, okay, what kind of questions do you have now? Now that you know a whole bunch of stuff, what other new questions do you have? Let's look at that and divide it. You know, it doesn't have to be siloed, but it can be, humanities can be structured a little bit and go that way. And I genuinely believe, and maybe you call me Pollyanna all you want, but if this is what school looked like and this is what they were doing, the kids will behave better. A greater percentage of them would. You would always have those kids who have something else going on that's distracting them. Home life sucks. Who knows? Something happens, something organic in their makeup. They have a learning disability. It needs to be addressed individually, where they're struggling to learn to read. And then you have a reading specialist who works with them and so on. There could be problems, but you deal with those very compassionately, one-on-one or in small groups with, specialists who know how to address these things. But if that's the focus, as opposed to, hey, everybody, let's play and have fun and do a little project and do another little project, instead of this affective feeling-based learning of we feel good about ourselves today, if it's more like knowledge-based, I think kids will feel good about themselves because they know things. I've seen little kids when they go from I didn't know it to now I know it, the look on their face, how excited they are, how much they want to share with the adults in their lives, how much they want to demonstrate what they can do, how much they want to work harder the next day to do more. I've seen it. And I've seen it across cultures. I've seen it across classes. I've seen it across ability levels. It's not just little rich kids or little white kids or little this kids or little that. No, it's kids. It is kids believing in them that they can do it and pushing them to do it. I strongly encourage you, Bob, if you aren't familiar with Marva Collins, to go look at YouTube and look up Marva Collins teaching or Marva Collins, the Marva Collins way. Watch her teaching those kids in her class. It'll blow your mind. If our schools look like that, we don't need SEL. And we don't need some special, she had rules, and you'll watch her. You'll see her in the moment expressing her rules and enforcing her rules, just in line with the rest of the class. It's not like a separate class, a separate time, a special activity or anything. It's just she reinforced good. She reinforced what she wanted done. She reinforced attitudes. She reinforced behaviors. Amazing. There's a book called The Marva Collins Way. And what really frustrates me is everybody knew about her. Ronald Reagan wanted her to be Secretary of Education. She turned it down because she wanted to keep teaching. But we've known about her way, we've known about her approach, and we've known that her approach worked and what she didn't just call the schools in Chicago where she got her kids, call them the unteachables. They were the forgotten kids. The kids were like, the schools wrote them off. One of her students, the school said was retarded. She went on, I think, to be a lawyer. Like, these were cast-offs of the public school. They threw their hands up, so we can't do anything with them. And Marva Collins starts her own school, takes them in, and there's a video of her teaching, and then there's a video follow-up for like, where are they now, the Marva Collins students? Unbelievable. We know what works. Her way worked. She taught her teachers in her way, and no, they didn't have a desk. They didn't sit down. And obviously no devices. They were walking around the room. The class was mixed age. It was a mixed age classroom. These kids were reading the classics. These kids were quoting Shakespeare. These kids were like, it's because I've seen it. I know it's possible. And I'm so tired of educators going, you can't do that and you can't do this and you can't do that. Can't you though? You haven't tried. So I guess that's my very long-winded answer of saying, I don't think we need to replace SEL. I think SEL is being pitched as a Band-Aid for a problem that self-esteem movement caused and the anti-bullying campaign caused, which was a lot of confusion and boundaryless narcissism on the parents. And they raise their kids wacky, and they're not doing social and emotional development at home. And they come to school and the teachers are like, ah! So as SEL comes in the scene and says, oh, we'll fix it. And then social justice got involved, although I think CASEL was originally established for that purpose anyway. They just saw that there was a need and they went, hey, we'll pitch it like this. Now it's social justice oriented. We're going to make them good people this way. And yet they're behaving worse than ever. So maybe we go back to actually teaching things. Because when I went to school, and I went to public school through 9th grade, just a New Jersey public school, wasn't fancy. I think I saw maybe 2 fights ever, like ever. I got detention for cutting class. I cut art class one too many times. I'm going to the bathroom, didn't come back. Ooh, went to the library to see my friends. Yeah, probably shouldn't have done that. I got detention. Never did it again. Can promise you that. But I got detention. It was like that. I broke the rules. I got detention. Nothing to whine about. We all watched the movies from the 80s. The kids sitting in, Saturday detention. We've watched Breakfast Club. That doesn't exist anymore. But it worked. People go, oh, that's terrible. Oh no, but it worked. We didn't have these open warfare in the hallways. We didn't have guns and drugs and teachers getting beaten up by their students. We didn't have this stuff. It just didn't happen. Or it happened so rarely. It was like a one-off situation. And that's not to say that things were perfect, but in Chicago in particular, before they did 10 years of SEL, this is statistics, the reading percentage, the percentage of literacy was in the 70s, like 75%. Still not great. Not happy with that. 10 years of SEL later, it's down in the 30-something percentile. Now, I can't say that's because SEL, obviously. But I can certainly tell you that because the behavior is worse, the attention is worse, everything is worse, it didn't help. It didn't bring up those academic scores from 75% or whatever they were. It didn't improve behavior because behavior is markedly worse. So why spend all that money on it? If it doesn't do what it says it's going to do, improve outcomes. What outcomes? For whom? It's a lot of money. If nothing else, it's a lot of money. Multi-billion-dollar business. So, and data mining. So that's why, it's like, you're so hostile to SEL. And I'm like, it doesn't work. It doesn't do what it says it's going to do. And there is evidence that it makes things worse. There was the one study with the wise teens where they basically did dialectical group therapy with all the kids and called it SEL. And more kids reported being depressed and anxious after than before. There's a research paper that documents that I've covered on the channel. I'm not making it up. So anyway, all right. Let's see. They flatly refused your question about what justice is, and they didn't even acknowledge it. That's telling. Very telling. If you don't know what a word means, you shouldn't be using it. What people forget is that so much of math and science has actual roots outside of Europe. The modern formulation is European. The foundation parts. Absolutely. That's why I love this book. It's such a great book. Maxwell Being, what do you think of the indigenous stolen land claim that we keep hearing about? To me, it's like they want to erase everything that came after the indigenous to make a deal today. Yeah, so this goes back to decolonization, which is Fanon, Franz Fanon. Okay, so he, and then of course Marcuse, these are people, 20th century writers, were all about decolonization. But decolonization is just like a faster, more, it's a let's get to the revolution or the Paulo Freire, kind of endless circular revolution more quickly. Just tear down everything. Let's teach the kids that everything that is not just bad and needs to be changed, but needs to be quite literally destroyed, decolonized. And all that decolonize means is like eliminate anything to do with Western Enlightenment, capitalism, like eliminate that, get rid of it. Basically go back to the primitive. Go back to when nothing was what it is. So these land acknowledgements are like not only, delusional about you lost, too bad, so sad, there's a country here now, there are people who live here, but it is also saying we want to reject all the knowledge and all the development and all the history and all the everything, including the people. Decolonization is what you end up with you end up with like Cambodia. if you pursue that to its logical conclusion. Because you have to get rid of all the people who don't want to decolonize these ideas and these things, developments. You have to kill the people, because the people don't just go, okay, let's not have indoor plumbing. Let's not have capitalism anymore. Let's not have, like free markets at all. It's just, not do it. There'll always be people who go, no, I don't want to do that. And we know historically what happens to the people who say, no, I don't want to do that. They get dead. That's the decolonizers' ultimate goal. It was never actually intended to help kids, we know, because of UNESCO says. Yeah. I mean, if you go back and you read the origins of SEL itself, and through Castle, or through the Theosophists and Alice Bailey and all of these people, who, by the way, have their offices, the Lucius Trust, which is the descendant of the Lucifer Trust. Yes, that's what it was called. Alice Bailey's little group. Their headquarters is at the UN building. Yeah, if you follow that back, it was to re-engineer society. 100%. Like completely. Totally change it. Totally change what an individual is, the relationship of the individual to the self, to the family, everything. Everything that we take for granted as being true, they wanted to just redo. And it's very creepy, and it has origins in the occult. And the program I recommend to learn about that is James Lindsay's WTF is SEL. It's 3 hours long. Put earbuds in, whatever, clean your house, go for a walk, drive somewhere, whatever you have to do. But if you listen to it, all will be understood. It will be very, very clear to you that the origins of SEL were not to help people. So anyway, yeah, it is very worth watching. There's not much to see. It's more of a listening thing, so you can listen to it. So my thoughts on No Child Left Behind Act or teachers' unions being detrimental to public education. Okay. I think public education is detrimental to education. So I'm what most people call an extremist. I'm an abolitionist. I think that all education should be private. And I don't mean like fancy little private schools. I mean that parents should be as responsible for figuring out how to get their kids educated. And that might mean a private school that it's a big one. It could be a small little school. It could be a micro school. It could be a parochial school. It could be homeschool. It could be a lot of different things. It could be going to different places, 3-4 times a week, and, taking classes. It could be wilderness school. It could runs the gamut, but that it's left to parents the same way, dressing them, feeding them, housing them, sending them, taking care of them in the summer and sending them to summer camp or not, should be taken care of. So that's my first thing. But as far as No Child Left Behind, I think it was terrible, because it tied money and the getting of money into a system that the government already said, we're going to have this system and we're going to use taxpayer dollars to pay for it. But you have to do this, and this in order to get the money. Like that seems extremely counterproductive. You either establish the schools, decide what it should cost, set a budget, and dish out the money in some kind of equitable way. Yes, equitable. It should be done, like, not determined by, what fancy neighborhood, but it should be like, there's this many kids, there's this many dollars. There's this many kids, there's this many dollars. There you go. That seems to be the most fair, the most equitable way to do it. And, if different communities want to pour more money in and boosterism or something, I guess they can do that. That's, what are you going to do to stop them? You can't make it illegal to, fund their own football uniforms or something. But I think there should be a baseline of, if you're going to have it, fund it. So No Child Left Behind, I think, was pretty shitty. But then again, it was coming from the federal government, not the state. And we shouldn't have had a federal Department of Education in the first damn place. So No Child Left Behind was 2 things wrong. One, it tied money to performance, where before it was just like, here's money. But before that, it was saying, it's also saying, and we want you to teach certain things a certain way. So even though it's unconstitutional for the federal government to say this is the curriculum, the way they get around it is with money. Oh, you don't have to do it. We're not going to make you do it. But if you don't do it, no money. So if you don't do the standardized tests and you don't meet the guidelines, you don't meet the standards, no money for you. Now, who wants to be the governor in charge of that state going, yeah, screw you, George Bush, and screw you, federal government. We're not doing things your way. We're not following your little federal plan of whatever. And we're going to do things the way we think it's best for our kids in the state of fill in the blank. You want to be that governor that goes back to the state and says, I just turned down $18 million or whatever for education because I don't want to do what they want me to do. Nobody wants to do that. Politically, you can't do that. So they end up like, okay, what do we got to do? So they do it. And the teachers unions didn't like it, obviously, because again, they got to bitch about something to raise money for elections. They didn't like it at first. Then afterwards, because it was like this set of standards they could follow, then it was okay. Same thing with Common Core. Hated it. Then they defended it. Because anything that basically makes it easier, and I put easier in quotes, for teachers to not have to be subject matter experts or makes it easier for people to become teachers. Teachers unions like that. So the irony is they oppose things that ultimately made it easier to become a teacher. Why did Common Core make it easier to become a teacher? Because you taught to standards, you didn't teach to knowledge. The knowledge-based curriculum ended in 1983. Officially. Did away with it. Went to a standards-based model. What is a standards-based model? Standards-based means we have a list of standards like student will be taught X. That's standards-based. Knowledge-based is student will demonstrate knowledge of. Student will demonstrate ability to. So at the end of a class or a course or a semester or whatever, the knowledge base, the teacher would be held accountable that their students knew how to do things. So the individual teacher is held accountable to that. That's what the standard was. Standards-based was like, you'll present this material, you will cover this material. Well, now, if I'm not a subject matter expert, that's okay. I just have to cover it. So, okay, today, class, we're learning about the Declaration of Independence. Here it is. Go read it. I covered it. I'm done. Check the box. We're not going to have a test on it. There's not anything I have to demonstrate that the kids know it. Don't have to. I mean, it can, but I don't have to. I just have to cover it. So suddenly we can have teachers who come in and be teachers who are really not very, and those kind of people who might get caught up in your kids aren't doing very well are more likely to get fired. The union doesn't want that. So it made it easier for more people to become teachers, and teachers were likely to want the protection of the union, whereas really professional teachers who take their profession very seriously, and I know things and I know my subject, are not the best. They tend to be more independent. They tend to be, I wouldn't say conservative, but they tend to be more independent. They tend to not really want to pay union dues and do the whole union organizing political thing, because the union was solidly Democrat since forever. So you're a subject matter expert in math or science or whatever, and you just don't want to be in a political union, but then you had to be, because up until the 90s, you had to be. I think it shoved a lot of potential teachers out of the profession and dissuaded others from joining it. That plus No Child Left Behind and Common Core and things of that nature. It made people who were professional, like me. I wanted to be a professional teacher. I go into teaching and I'm like, wait, what? I can't use phonics? What is this crap I have to do? This is the thing. What? Just do it. And I ignored them at first. I'm like, I'm using phonics. Screw you. Phonics works. You're making us look bad. I get a lecture from the shop steward. You can't do that. The other teachers don't know how to do it. They're not doing it. We weren't taught to do that. You can't do that. I'm like, I'm out. See ya. Who wants to work in that environment? Just like present, do that. I'm a presenter. That's not a teacher. Be nice and present. Be agreeable and present. So I think they were very detrimental. I think the unions are detrimental. I think their motivation is 100% political, not about the kids at all. Listen to them, read their materials. It's all about the teachers, the adults. It's not about the kids. And if it is about the kids, it's politicized, but it's not about the individual children. And then No Child Left Behind was garbage. Everything since Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education has just gone downhill. You can actually look at all of our literacy scores, our math scores, everything from 1979. Because the incentives, which were already in the wrong place, just there was nothing left. So it's a mess. It's a mess. Those are my thoughts. Hope that answered your question. Any last questions? Any last thoughts about this? I guess in summary, I wanted you guys to see what a prominent educator, does. Oh, I meant to show you how she found it. So real quick, how did she find this thing in the first place? Because you're probably going, all right, well, how does the parent, figure out where this stuff is? She saw that kindergarten lesson and then the middle school lesson. She just happened to go to the Facebook thing to show it to me, but she'd seen it with the kids' stuff coming home, heard about it from the kid, and was like, wait, why are you talking about this climate change, this stuff in the school? What is going on? Huh? Well, of course, try to find anything in a kid's in a kid's, what you call it, Chromebook, and forget it. It's like a nightmare trying to figure out what is happening. So then she starts looking at the materials from the school, like the consultant. Who's the consultant they hired to bring in this program? And she found this person who's the consultant. And so she's like, huh, that's interesting. So then she went and looked for that, who follows this person, or where does this person get their material? What kind of things are they sharing? And she found this guy, Bob Greenberg. And she's like, okay, so that person who's consulting for our district is watching a lot of this guy's films, this guy's videos on his website. And then she's scrolling through and look who she sees. She sees Joel Westheimer. And then she sees What Kind of Citizen. And that's how she found it. Just kind of following through in the social media of the teachers, the consultants, the principal, the superintendent. Who do they follow? What are they tweeting? What are they sharing? And that's how she got to it. And that guy that I just showed you has this YouTube channel, the Brainwaves Video Anthology. So she started going through this and she's like, oh, wow, I see a trend. All of these people, these are all teacher educators or educators themselves, and they're all of one frame of mind. It's all social justice. Look who's there. Michael Mann. There's Michael Mann. If you're not familiar with Michael Mann, I don't know if Sia Sophia is still here. He just successfully sued Mark Stein for defamation and won a huge award for defamation, claiming that, oh, you're still here? Look, he's got videos up here. Our fragile moment, surviving the climate crisis. The new climate war, the fight to take back our planet. Teachers make a difference. Carl Sagan. Teachers watch these videos and then take these ideas into their classrooms because these people explicitly tell them to. Teachers, you're so important. You need to go tell your classes this stuff. This is what you should be teaching. This is what's important in education. This is why what you do is so saintly and noble. So, of course, they feel super good about themselves, too. It also attracts a certain kind of teacher. So this exists. Teaching for the future. Teachers make a difference. Networking. A lot of teachers make a difference. Focus on leverage. Wonder what that one's about. Let the students run the show. Okay, so this is what this all is. And this apparently, this YouTube has 37,000 subscribers, has over 2,000 videos, all aimed at teachers. And it's all about social justice. So she found that and she's like, huh. Here are just some of the professors that are featured. Just professors. Look who's right up top. Noam Chomsky. Okay, so you get the picture. So what this parent did was just follow it along. After she found Joel Westheimer, that's when she went and started poking around the Zinn Education Project and the different research papers and so on. So if you're trying to figure out what's going on in your kid's school or where are these ideas coming from, follow the social media of the teachers. If you can't find the teacher's social media, follow the superintendent. Chances they have an account. They have to. So the superintendent has one, the principal has one, and your administrators even set the tone way more than the teachers half the time. They send them or tell them to go to PD, or they, highly recommend. And also the districts are paying for it, generally speaking, or reimbursing. So look at what they're bragging about. Look what they say. I went to this awesome training. It was so great. Or our teachers are going to this, or we're so proud of that, or I'm happy to align with or partner with, or whatever. We just hired this consultant. Or look at the different consultants that are on the budget from the school board. When you look at your school board minutes and you see money spent, you should be looking at the budget and you should be looking at where they spent their money on consultants. Then go look at the consultant websites. Why are they consulting with this company? This is what she does. This is what it takes to be an involved parent in 2024. 3 kids in a school, or in a school district rather, at all different levels, kindergarten, I think 7th and 8th grade. But this is what it takes. And so when people tell me like, "Oh, I couldn't possibly homeschool. It's too hard. I would just take too much time." I'm like, "Does it really? You think so?" I do this to help you guys, and I'm homeschooling. Okay? I wouldn't wanna be doing this and worrying about my kid. At least my kid's over there on the other side of that door. If I had to do this and then be like, "Ah, I gotta drop them off tomorrow." No. No, I just wouldn't wanna do it. And, there are people telling me, "No, not in my school. It's not happening at my school." I'm sure it isn't. My school is great. My school's this, my school's that. Okay. I hope you're right. But I would encourage you to go check. Just double check. Just check. Because chances are it's not. It's different districts are at different levels of this social justice stuff. Obviously, the higher percentage of awesome teachers you have, and by awesome, I mean either didn't get this training or had this training and said, "That's for the birds, I'm not doing it," and you don't have a superintendent or a principal who says you're going to do it whether you like it or not, then maybe your school is okay. But I can tell you that every school district in the nation has an equity plan. Every single one. They don't get money from the federal government if they don't. It's the law. Anyway, so oh wait, hang on a second. Max Wellbeing says I have no filter, so I constantly have to tell myself I like me just Yeah, I get in trouble with that too. Let's see. She says Michael Mann has a record of being an absolute ass among my field. He doesn't handle disagreement well. But it's so important to make trouble for the comfortable. So important, isn't it? Apparently, he doesn't like trouble made for him. He wants to be very comfortable. He doesn't even like the slightest criticism, and he's tried to destroy the livelihoods of other scientists. But it's really important that we be comfortable with trouble. Okay, got it. Yeah. And then Max says you should look up Beautiful Trouble and you'll see how the woke radical left thinks they're crazy is organized. That's why they sound the same. Yeah. That was kind of the point of the stream. And I'll say it again. There's the last thing I'll say. It is a mistake to assume that they're all malevolent monsters who just want to take over the world. Okay. The kind of evil that they do, and yes, I call it evil because anything in my world that, in the world of Deb, anything that puts an individual person's life in hock to the mob, psychologically, politically, emotionally, legally, it basically makes you beholden and indentured to the mob is evil. It takes away your life in a very real way. It's not chattel slavery. It's not shackles on your wrists in a literal sense, but it can so severely limit your choices in life that it is a kind of ownership. And so anything like that, any kind of obligation like that that others seek to put on you, I think is evil, whether they mean to do it or not. And that's the banality of evil in a totalitarian system. The grand irony of all this is he talks about totalitarian states like they're out there, like they're run by like a strongman dictator or a military junta. That's the only kind of totalitarianism. Sir, I hate to break it to you. There are plenty of totalitarian systems where it's collective totalitarianism. It's not one person running everything. It almost always devolves into that, but you don't necessarily need that. You can have a technocracy, a kleptocracy. That's what we have right now. We don't have a military strongman. We don't have a single dictator, but we are in a totalitarian system because there are so many rules about what we can say, what we can't say, where we can go and not go, what we can do and not do with our property, with our lives, with our words. We're not as bad as some. We're still, I would say, the freest when it comes to speech. Look at the UK, look at Canada, what you're not allowed to say, what you're not allowed to do. That's totalitarianism. And they can control your literal thoughts. You can't stand on a sidewalk and pray in the UK in public. You're offending people. They will arrest you. If you say something at home that's deemed transphobic and one of your relatives doesn't like it, you can be arrested. I mean, how is that not totalitarianism? You don't need to have a dictator to do it. You just need laws that govern your life to the point where things you do that harm no one in any real way are illegal and they can use force against you. So everything he's talking about is like, oh, you know, I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? We have that now. And that's what he's pursuing. That democracy that he wants is a social justice totalitarianism where the loudest mob gets to dictate how you live. Remember, he said people disagree about how we should live. As soon as I heard that, I was like chills. We disagree about how we should live. Well, we don't live. I live and you live. And other people live individually over there. We don't do, there is no we. There is no us. And people get confused when I say that. They're like, what are you talking about? We're a country. We live together. We have neighbors. Da, 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 da. Okay. That is not the same. That is, you know, we're social creatures and we live in a nation and we're interdependent and we kind of, you know, like interact with each other voluntarily and all this kind of stuff. Yes, of course we do. We're not islands. But there is no defined we. We don't all get together, all 350 million of us, although at this point it's probably like 400 million of us. We don't all get together and have a meeting about what we should do. We are not a hive mind. We're not the Borg. We still live our lives and die alone. And that's as it should be, meaning like we make the decisions. Even within our families, I don't get dictated to. I don't go check in with my husband about every move that I make, every dollar that I spend, every thought that I have. There is no we. There's a we about we things. And then there's an I about I things. And it's the same as you expand out to your neighborhood, your town, your city, your state, your country. You pick the we and you interact with it voluntarily when you feel like it. There's no like mandatory, by the way, we decided that this is what's happening. We decided all the children are going to have SEL. Nobody asked me. We decided social justice is what school is for. We did that. Who's we? I wasn't invited to that party. I never got the memo. See how it works? All right. Thank you guys. All right. Well, last couple things. Castle was pushing everywhere in public schools for money. Yes, they are. They're collecting data. Data is gold. Data is like the new oil. It's so valuable. 3,300 people were arrested in the UK in a year's time for hate speech. One was arrested for posting rap lyrics. 500 community work in a year in house arrest for posting the N-word. Yeah. No. I'm Canadian. I know exactly what it's like to have a wannabe dictator trying to control it. Yeah. And you get more than anybody how they can smile and they can be very nice seeming, right? They look at me. I am like a Ken doll and I have a smile on my face. And don't you think that I am nice? And I just have your best interests at heart, don't I? Meanwhile, he is absolutely a monster. Absolutely a monster. Thank you guys. Thanks everyone for sticking around with me for so long. I really, really appreciate it. I know this was like a big topic, but I enjoyed hanging out with you. I enjoyed talking about this. I will put all the resources in the description box so you can check out everything on your own and listen to things more if you want. And I will be back next Monday with another episode. So take care, everybody. See you next time.